Welcome back, everybody, to the Meet the Bus podcast. I'm your host, Jeffrey Reckes, and this is episode 9. And today we have a very special guest. We have our first staff interview of this podcast. I'm very excited to introduce this guest today. He actually taught me in 2019 with the Blue Knights Drum and Bugle Corps. I don't know if I can say all the years because I think it would take way too long in the intro for me to say every year, every group or whatever. So we're just going to go through and we're just going to talk about where this guy's been. He's marched with the Blue Stars. He's marched with Carolina Crown. He's marched with Rhythm X Winds. He was on staff with the Academy. He was also on staff with the Blue Knights from 2018 to 2022. And he is currently on the brass staff right now with the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps. Ladies and gentlemen, Keith Ty. Welcome onto the program, sir. How you doing?
This is cool. I'm doing good. This is awesome. I like I said, I've been watching this podcast on Facebook every once in a while and just getting a chance to check this stuff out. Like, I messaged you and I was like, this is really cool. We need to make something happen here. First of all, because I haven't talked to you in a while and I'm because it's been too long. And also just I'm a geek about this stuff, so I love talking. I love talking drum corps. It's my favorite.
Which I think it's so cool that you reached out. It was so like surprising to me because at first I was like, okay, well I can get my friends on and we can all talk about drum corps and I can talk to my close friends and we can get that started and we'll see where we go from there. So to hear from you so early on being like, hey, this is cool. Keep up the work and keep what you do. I was like, oh my God. Like I think it was after the Dylan Ryder episode, which by the way, if you haven't gone and see that, please go check that out. That was an incredible episode. I think it was after that episode and you were like, hey, doing a great job. Keep up the good work. And as soon as I saw Keith Ty on my phone sent that, I was like, dude, I have to ask like right away. I was like, will you come on the podcast?
Like I said, I will talk to anybody about drum corps ever, but definitely if it's one of the people I got a chance to teach, and absolutely. Let's make it happen. That was exciting.
Absolutely. Let's get right into it. So something that we ask every single guest when they come on. What got you into music, and maybe more specifically, your instrument?
My background is very unique because my mom and my dad both played euphonium in college. Well, my mom played like 7 instruments, but the main one was euphonium. Growing up early, like I was playing wind instruments when I was like 2. Like my dad would say, here's my baritone. You want to try it? And I would just grab it and make a fart sound on the instrument real quick and whatever and all that. Like, and then obviously my dad marched Star of Indiana. So, getting a chance to like watch a lot of those videos growing up. Drum corps and band has just been a part of my life since I was born, basically. At one point in my life was like, I'm going to be a baseball player. This is going to be fun. And that did not work at all. Did not work out at all. I was not bad at it, but by the time I started marching band, I forgot how to throw the ball. So that was fun.
Maybe this is a thing.
I played trumpet in 6th grade because this was around the time that I was like, sports, this is going to be the thing. I'm going to play baseball. And I was like, what's the instrument that I can carry around that will be the lightest thing that I could possibly carry around? And that was trumpet. I could have played flute. I didn't want to do that because both my parents were brass players, and I was like, I'm going to play a brass instrument. And then after my 6th grade year, my dad walked up to me like before a band had even started, and I think maybe he got an email about something, and my dad was like, hey, you should think about switching to euphonium. I actually think that might be a good instrument for you. Just seventh grade me was just like,
that's heavy.
That sounds really heavy. I don't think I want to do that. And my dad I can always tell when he's trying to guide me in the right direction. It's very helpful in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. But in this moment, he said, well, you're not very good at the trumpet.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll switch to euphonium. And I'm really glad that happened just because it's like immediately better. And I basically just fell in love with playing the instrument like freshman year of high school and that when I was at Carmel. Hearing a junior in the baritone section, like listen to me play, and he was in the top band, listening to him be like, hey, you make a really good sound on the euphonium. And I was like, oh.
That's hope. We like that. Yeah. It's always good to hear.
Freshman year me, and I'd just been having people in middle school all the time just tell like, middle school is not a good time for Keith Ty. I'm just going to say that. It was just not. And so like going to high school and being at like marching band camp and hearing somebody tell me that I was doing a really good job, honestly, like was a big thing that like kind of like got me going on everything. Yep. Started taking it very seriously. Obviously did like some drum corps camps. I actually did a drum corps camp with the Blue Stars in 2010.
Wow.
That I did that. I was 15 years old.
Nice.
And actually, I lied. I didn't do a camp. I did the whole camp season because they had all of their camps in Indianapolis. So I was like, yeah, I can drive there. It's like a 35-minute drive to get to the camp.
Was it just like experience for you, or were you like actively trying to do the thing?
Yes. So it was like I obviously I was doing it for experience, just because like that was it was really cool. But also at the same time, I was like, I want to do this. This would be really cool. And I was like not hanging like a whole lot, like especially visually, I was not hanging. But musically, I could hold my own, obviously. But it was not easy. It was, and that's part of the reason why I kept doing it, just because it was the hardest thing I'd ever done, and it was just a camp season. And I got to done with the April camp, and Frank Sullivan, who was the caption head of the Blue Stars that year, was like, walked up to my mom and was like, can we have him march this year? And my mom said no. So that was the end of it. And so then I marched the next season, and everything kind of went on from there. So
that's awesome. That's incredible. So quick question. You mentioned that your dad did Star of Indiana. Where did he did he teach drum corps before you got into drum corps? Where did he teach?
So yeah, he taught at a bunch of different places in the 90s and in the early 2000s. I think he may have done a little bit of time with Crown, like in the first couple of years that Harloff was at Crown. I know he taught somewhere in the 90s. I don't remember where. I'm sure I would remember as soon as he would say it, but I just off the top of my head, no idea. But in 2006, the Blue Stars went from Division II, which is now called Open Class. They went from Division II to Division I. It was the first time they'd been in Division I since I think the 70s. And Donnie Van Doren had been asked to find somebody to be the brass caption head of the Blue Stars, and he asked my dad to do that. So my dad did that from in 06 and 07, and then he couldn't do it again in 08 just because he had 4 kids, so had to go take care of a lot.
Gotta take a little time.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to did you ever used to like go to rehearsals and like watch him teach? Was that like your introduction to drum corps?
Well, my first interaction with drum corps was when I was like 5 years old.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was 1999 DCI final. So I guess I was about to turn 5. I was 4 years old.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I lived in Wisconsin at the time. And we decided that we were going to go to DCI finals, which was at Madison or in Madison that year. And apparently I don't have any memory of being at that show. I just know that people told me that I was at that show. Apparently for months after that show, I would just be singing the 99 Vanguard show in my back. Like I'd grab a golf club and like spin it around and sing the show while I'm like in the backyard. And I'm like I said, I'm 5 or 6 years old. And my brother and sister would try to join me and do the same thing. I'm like, no, it goes like this, guys. So I literally like grew up in that sort of thing.
That's awesome. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So like, even though this was kind of always in your life, I mean, literally, quite literally from like birth on, this was always just surrounded in your life. Was it kind of just like, okay, this thing is in my life, or like what really solidified it for you that you're like, I have to do this thing?
You know, you're like, it was around my life for a long time. You're right. Basically, through middle school for me, I would get excited about going to drum corps shows over the summer, but it was just like something I did for a day over the summer. Like, you know, and, you know, like sometimes we would go and hang out at a rehearsal that my dad was teaching with the Blue Stars. Like that happened from time to time. They had spring training somewhere in Minnesota in 2014, and that was like pretty close to where I live. Did I say 2014? Sorry.
I think so.
Sorry.
Same things.
2007 is what I meant. 2007 is what I meant. They had spring training there. So it was close to where I lived. So we were there 2 or 3 times that year, and I was 2007. That would have been, I was in 7th grade at that time. So
gotcha.
Yeah. No, it was around my life for a while, but I think the moment that it really solidified for me was my sophomore year of high school. I really learned what it was like to fully commit to something for the first time. Like I just completely committed myself to being as great as I possibly could be that year. Got to the end of the season and did the full run at finals with Carmel High School, and had the greatest experience and greatest run through of my life. That moment of feeling the reward for all the work that I had put in really like made it obvious to me that like this is what I want to do. I think the first thing I said to my dad was like, I want to be a euphonium performance major, and he was like, no.
Wait, why? He literally did like music is his whole life as well. So it's like, what?
The most useless degree in the world, and you can follow what I say here or not. The most useless degree in the whole world is a euphonium performance degree. There is not much you can do with that degree. I'm just gonna be honest. Like you can go to Europe and get a job in a brass band if you want to. Like that's cool, but you have to be like one of the best 10 euphonium players in the world to do that.
Oh my God. Yes.
So it's like, yeah, it's a lot.
Tough.
So he was like, go into education, and I fully bought into that, and I've been kind of fully bought into that since, like I said, since like my sophomore year of high school. So
absolutely. I had a quick question about like Carmel, because I mean, as the people know out there, I didn't really know until I got into drum corps, like how the rest of like high school band BOA scene kind of worked. Because I just came from a high school in Missouri. We had our marching band, we had our band program, and that's just kind of what that was. And I kind of only knew Missouri marching band. That was my little circle that I knew. Even at that time, how competitive is like Indiana marching band, specifically Carmel, because Carmel is like competing every single year in BOA finals, just like they're right up there with everybody else. So like talk about that a little bit. How competitive was it then?
It was very competitive. When I got to Carmel, that was when Avon had the three-peat. They won 08, which is the year before I was in high school, and then they won 2009, 2010. By the way, if you haven't seen Avon 2010, will blow your mind. Okay. One of the most talented bands that's ever been at Grand Nationals. They were unbelievable.
Oh my goodness.
That was also, I remember that like they did this was like when I completely flipped my mind on like how I felt about a lot of this stuff. Because when you're a freshman, you feed into a lot of the stuff that the seniors say about competition, where it's just like, who cares about this band? This, like, we're not going to talk this. Don't even look at them when they're performing, and like all this kind of stuff. And like, I'd walk up to the front of the field and just like start watching the bands on the field perform, and they go, "Hey, we don't watch bands perform because we're going to beat them." By the time I was a junior, I think that a lot of that stuff kind of started to fade away a little bit.
Maybe we could learn something.
Maybe we could be really good instead of just say we're going to win. Right. Exactly. Like it's a thought, right? Back to the Avon thing I was talking about. I remember listening to them at their performance that they did after retreat for Grand National Finals.
Yeah.
And, I still hear seniors and juniors in the band just being like, what's going on?
Who cares?
We should have won, blah, blah, blah. And I listened to them perform their brass feature, which has like more double tonguing than anybody did that night. And it's just like crystal clear. And I was like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, yeah,
they got it.
Guys,
whatever they're doing, they got it figured out over there. Yeah. That was so foreign to me because my high school band, we never did anything like that. Never anything complex with like double tonguing. So like if I ever saw a video of something, I was like, who the hell are these guys? Like, where are all these bands coming from? Like, how do they do this? Like they're playing like drum corps level music at the high school level. I'm like, these kids are insane.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. Well, and obviously everybody was very competitive and all of that, but I gotta give Chris Crakey, who's one of the who's in my senior year he was, but I don't know if he is anymore. Yeah. He was the director of the marching band, and I think he still is. I'd need to check, but I'm pretty sure he is still the director of the marching band. Completely changed the way that we thought about competition. What all the time would be like, hey, if we win but we were awful, do we care? If we lose and we were really great, that's what this is all about. Like that's the most important thing in this activity. It's not that you win. It's
being the best version.
Exactly. It's you are the best version of what you possibly could have been that season.
Yes.
And I can remember like we won state finals in my senior year of high school, and I could start to feel a little bit of that competitiveness come out.
Bringing home hardware. It's kind of nice.
We had our first rehearsal of Grand Nationals week, and we were awful that day. Awful. Just bad. And we're getting yelled at, and people are just being like, hey, this is not it. You are not performing very well right now. We did our run through at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it was awful. And we get down to the field, and he says, hey, if you're going to rehearse like this, I don't want to hear a single other person talk about winning this week. if you're going to rehearse like this, we're not going to talk about it. Like the second I hear you talk about winning, you're not in the right place. You're not in the right headspace.
Wow.
And immediately the next day,
Shift.
Immediately we were better. For the rest of the week, it was not about we're going to go win at Grand Nationals this week. It was about we're going to max out this show. And it's going to be the greatest thing that we can possibly do on Saturday. And to be honest, I'm really glad that was the case, because like that's how I feel about everything when it comes to band. I'm a very competitive person too, but I don't care about the competition if we're bad.
Or if we're not on the same page, like working together and being great. Like those are all things that like you learn in high school, that's like the teamwork and like working together towards this common goal. That is what you're doing all this for, not for like the pictures after Saturday night when you get like a trophy or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. That last season at Carmel really did change a lot of the way I feel about band, because I was very competitive before that. And also just changed a lot about the way that I like go about my life. I feel like if I'm not putting the best effort into everything I'm doing, if I question what happens after that, then I'm wasting my time.
Right.
If I didn't put the best effort into what I just did, I have no say in what happens after that.
Exactly. You did what you could to control it. So like you have every bit of that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So talking a little bit about the rookie year, quick question. Did your dad teach at Blue Stars your rookie year?
He did actually. I don't remember how many times he ran the horn line, but it was definitely at least once, because I think leading into our home show in lacrosse, he was running the horn line that week. And that was pretty cool.
That's cool. That's really cool.
And actually, like my first block at my first camp, my dad was running the block too. Like that was
wow.
And I missed a release, and my dad did say, "Is that my son missing a release over there?" Like I did.
And every other old guy's like, "Are you kidding me right now? Like this kid?"
Who is that?
How was that in your rookie year getting taught by your dad? Was it kind of a pain, or was it kind of nice? Because it could be a pain. It's like, oh, my dad every day just like watching me do this thing. You can call me out every second, be like, come on, Keith. What are we doing, Keith?
Right. No, like to be honest with you, it was awesome, because at the camp season, it was whatever. Like at that point, it's drum corps. I don't really care who's teaching us at this point. Like I'm 15 years old. They're all smarter than me. It's fine. I remember my dad running the horn line that week, and I had just been having not a fun summer, and it had nothing to do with the Blue Stars. The Blue Stars are awesome. I loved being there, and it was a great time. Yes. I was just 16 years old and not very good at marching, and also not great at making decisions, to be completely honest.
You're 16 years old.
Yeah.
It's very hard going away from home, and like, you need to learn these time management and organizational skills, and you're watching all these 18 to 21-year-old kids just having it all together, and like you're just struggling during EPL. Like, bro, I'm just trying to pack up my bag in time to like get to the bus.
Yeah. Because when you're 16 years old, band on the field is not the hardest part of drum corps. That is not the hardest part, but it is
every other part.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember when he came in and was running a lot of rehearsals, it actually did bring me a lot of like calm. I don't know. I felt like I grew up a little bit that week, because I had just been struggling with everything. And in some cases, in some ways, I was even just kind of like, I was letting it get to me and letting it like affect what I was doing during the day. So like having him come in there and like kind of helping me set almost like a priority list for me. Cause like, and it was crazy having him come in, and like, he was not only being basically for a week, he was being the brass caption head for a week of the season, but he was also still being dad. And he still like had time to like, walk up to me in the middle of rehearsal and be like, "Hey, I want you to try this time." And I'm go, "Okay, let's do that. That sounds good."
That's cool.
Very rarely when I was at the Blue Stars did he like talk to me on the mic or talk to me like around everybody else. He would just kind of come up to me and say, "Hey, I need you to try this."
Mm-hmm.
All right, got you. That sounds good.
Wow.
And so it really kind of helped like focus my mind a lot.
It's got to help confidence wise too. Just knowing that like just still being in brass caption head mode and be like, "Keith, what are we doing?" Like over the mic. So everyone's like, like just being like, okay, you're 16. Like you're learning how to do all of this stuff right now, going up and helping you out. I think that's so huge. Yeah. That's so huge.
To be honest with you, I felt like it saved my season almost. Just like my mental space, like during that season, I was not in a mental space. I just felt like I was getting dragged on by the vets a lot, and I was, because I was bad.
Yeah.
And like
you don't realize until like a couple seasons later, when you actually get in the groove of your own things, you learn how to do everything your way and you start figuring it out, and you're like, I sucked my rookie year.
yeah, real bad. And it's amazing because like then you get to the end of your drum corps career. I did 5 years, so by the time I got to my 5th year of drum corps, it was like I'm never going to hear information I've never heard before, other than maybe a couple times.
But you know what's coming.
Exactly. Like it's so predictable what the rehearsals are going to be like and all that kind of stuff. And
yes, absolutely. Talking about that from your rookie year, I mean, we got a lot to talk about just in your drum corps career in general, but just really brief. What are some things you learned in your rookie year that you're like, oh, okay, we got to learn from this. We're not going to do that again. We got to get better from here.
The main thing I learned how to do is how to focus on one thing at a time. Like when you're doing EPL, for example, you have a list of things to get through that have to get done by this time, or you're the worst person.
Something's not going to be done, and it's going to be, yes.
And it's going to be your fault, and the drum corps is not going to be able to move on time, and it's going to be your fault, and that's no one's
going to be happy with you.
Yeah. And so I struggled a lot of times with staying on track mentally and just like allowing myself to complete each thought and each task to the point where I just would like shift around and do a lot of different things. And so like the thing I remember, my first ever EPL, instead of having everything done by the time EPL happened, I had about half of everything done by the time EPL started, except for like
wow.
obviously. But like I would just do bits and pieces of things because I would just do this thing and I get bored. All right, I'm going to go take care of this now and get bored.
Yeah.
Like that would just happen all the time. And so like for me, to be honest with you, it was like narrowing my focus to what exactly needs to get done right now. I'm going to go do that. Yeah. Okay, cool. I finished this thing. What exactly needs to be done right now? I'm going to go do that. And like that to me was to be honest, like the biggest thing that I learned that year was just like prioritizing what I needed to do.
What we can do in this amount of time.
Yes.
What we can take care of on our own. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
That's huge.
So like that was the main thing I learned.
That is crazy because I did not pick that up in my rookie year. Like every single EPL was just like, all right, throw everything together, throw it in the bag and throw it on the bus and let's go. Like, we're gone. It doesn't matter.
I remember having many EPLs like that in that first year. I mean, it was...
I had my brass caption head being like, 2 things at once, running through the gym, and everyone's like, we're on break now. He's like, 2 things at once. You better be eating, cleaning the horn, packing your bags and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. That was the main thing. Yeah. I learned so many things, obviously, that summer, but that was really the main thing. To the point where, like, I got back to the high school and I was so much of a, like, prioritize what we're doing right now that, like, I couldn't understand after a year of drum corps why high schoolers can't rehearse. Hey, we're being talked to right now. Why are you doing that? Like,
right.
I couldn't figure it out.
Yep. I remember I came back in my first year too. Same thing. I was just like, are we kidding me? Like, are we kidding right now? Rehearsal etiquette's off the whole bit. Like
it's such a hard thing to do. But hey, I had that experience. And now like for the rest of my like teaching drum corps career, I get to tell people that story and I get to go up to them and say, hey, don't be a jerk when you go back to your high schools. Cause like that's an easy way to get your band directors to go, why would I have my kids do drum corps? And they always come back and they're terrible people. It's like, it's not what we're doing.
No, it's just like, the biggest thing is just like be patient, I would say, because that's something I was not when I came back. I wanted everything to be done at that same high pace level that it happened during the summer. Everything happened so fast. And the thing that's like rammed into your head is like efficiency and the most efficient way to do things. So when I came back and that wasn't happening that way and people weren't treating it as serious as I used to treat it, I would get so mad because I was like, why are you guys even here? Like, if you guys don't even care about this thing, why are you guys even here? What are we doing? What's the whole point of rehearsing here anymore? And people are like, Jeff, you got to calm down. You got to realize you just did this whole thing at a crazy high level and you're super young and you've learned how to do it now. But like all of these kids, they just live normal lives and they go home, do homework and like play video games and it's chill. And so it's just like, calm down a little bit. My biggest thing was just like, be patient. And I eventually learned that. But I mean, even my first couple years coming back to high school, I was like, oh my God, like this is moving so slow. Why are we taking so much time on this? Why aren't people caring about this thing? Like I care about this thing. I remember I came back after my first year and we did like the first show and I'm like crying afterwards. And they're like, why are you crying? I'm like, that sucked. And we're just sitting here and everyone's fine with everything. And they're like, dude, like this is high school in Missouri marching band. just deep breath. Just deep breath and calm it down. Everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, okay, fine. Whatever, guys.
I can guarantee you I've had moments like that too. Oh, I do remember I had a meeting with because I was a section leader, so I had a meeting with the baritone section my junior year of high school. This was the year after I did my rookie year in drum corps. This was during the school day, and like I called this meeting. This is how dumb I was when I was junior in high school. I called this meeting to tell the baritones how bad they are. Like I called this meeting to tell them how. Basically what it was is we had some awesome freshmen that year that were like super gung-ho about band and worked hard at everything, and it was very cool to have all that stuff happen. And we had some sophomores, juniors, and seniors that were just happy to be there a lot of the time, and that's fine. Like whatever, you get your own experience with this. It's fine,
right? Yes,
but I called this meeting to go up to them and say, hey, why are you letting the freshmen try harder than you?
Yeah.
And that meeting wasn't that. I said something along the lines of that. And every single baritone was like, you're being a jerk right now.
Yeah, I'm leaving. Like, if this is what this is going to be, I'm going home.
Yes. That meeting really did a lot for me because I didn't realize that was what was going on. Like, I needed somebody to say, dude, you're being a jerk. Like,
come back to earth a little bit here.
Yes, because like from that moment on, like the way I treated like every single day in marching band was just like, I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And eventually people are going to follow that. And if they don't, that's none of my business. That's none of my business. Unless the band director tells me that it is my business. And then I'll take care of it.
I think I had the same kind of origin story. I remember I came back and I used to do the same thing. Like I remember before shows, I used to do like pep talks and I would like ask my band director, I was like, yo, can I get the band together? Can I like give us a little like, can I get us pumped up before a show? And I'd be like doing like a whole like Tom Brady, let's go kind of thing. And it's like, oh, chill out. And it's kind of the same thing where like eventually someone tells you like, yo, you got to cool out or like, we're not doing this thing anymore. And I'm like, okay. And so that's where I took my leadership style at like a young age from like, okay, from here on out, I'm just doing this whole thing by example. Like the whole thing is leadership by example, do my job and do my job only. And if everyone follows, great. If they don't, I gotta make sure I do my best job and just be a nice person. And that's why always like whenever I got to drum corps, my parents would always be like, you know, why aren't you like stepping up, being a section leader, this whole thing? And I was just like, I'm just trying to do my part. Like I was a 3-year vet at Oregon Crusaders and I was, you know, I think I played third trumpet all the way to my 3rd year. And they were just like, why? And I was like, cause I got to do my part. I'm doing my part within this organization. And if they need me to do this, then I will do this. And I will, you know, I will lead by example and do my part and work as hard as I can be. And hopefully everyone sees that and we follow along from there. And that's eventually what worked out for me. Cause like, while I can be vocal, I also find it much more enjoyable to lead by example because like if people can catch on and be like, hey, you're doing a good job. And if someone just says, hey, can we just do what he or she is doing right now? Because that's pretty cool. And it's just like, yeah, okay, that feels way better than like, hey, can you come talk to everybody? Because it's like, what do you want me to say? Like I'm some teenager right now who is just like running off adrenaline. What could I possibly say that could help these guys right now?
Yep. No, exactly. Yeah.
So moving on from there, getting into Carolina Crown. First question, why Carolina Crown?
After my 2012 season, my senior year was happening, and I've always felt very loyal to the organization or to like the Blue Stars and everything that they were doing. And I very much wanted to go back there for a little bit. But I wanted to just get a different experience, to be honest with you. And I was so hungry to get better. And I knew that if I went and auditioned at Crown and happened to make it, I'm going to be taught by some of the best brass educators in the entire world. And that had a big part to play in why I went over there. I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer. As long as I could figure out travel to get there and make sure that I could actually be at all these camps and make it happen, I was going to do that. It just, you know, my dad obviously had marched with a lot of people that were on the staff. And so he felt very comfortable just like having me go to a corps where he knew a lot of the people that were on staff. And that was something that was like made him very comfortable being like, yeah, absolutely. I'll drive you.
You're going to get taught by the best.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And absolutely.
It was a great like that was the main reason why I decided to go over there. And also to wear the cream pants. And then
R.I.P. R.I.P.
pants. Yeah, it was great.
So talking about some of the people that taught on that staff, as we know today, with all the coverage that we have in DCI now, which is great, and with the Crown Brass Dynasty that's happened within, oh my God, you could go back to 2008 Fini, I guess, where, I mean, you could even go back further than that. But now we know Matt Harloff as like the guy, the inside the circle guy, the brass program guy. It's like he is the brass person. There's all that hype surrounding him now. Was there that hype surrounding him then when you were going to Crown at that point, or was it kind of just Crown in general? Because now I feel like nowadays it's very much like if I'm going to Crown, I'm getting taught by Matt Harloff and I'm like inside the circle dude. Like that's the guy. When you see him, you're kind of starstruck. Oh my God, that's the inside the circle guy. So it's like, was there that hype around him then? Or
to be honest with you, I don't know.
That's fair.
The best answer I can give is I was very nerdy into watching all the drum corps videos and watching all the Crown videos on there.
Same.
I didn't see his name on those posts as often back then, and now I do. Like every time there's a video posted of the horn line, like you will see like somebody talking about Matt, which is well deserved. I mean, obviously. Yeah, I think probably right around that 2013 season was around the time that people started to take note of.
They got something building here.
Yeah, a lot of it is the social media stuff, specifically YouTube. And I think we got some videos from that 2013 season on YouTube, like from the horn line just playing in a parking lot during rehearsal.
A lot of live videos.
Or lots of lot videos. And you listen to them and they're all like, obviously I have very picky ears because I've been around the activity
forever
so long. But some of the videos that I watched from that season, I have I'm having trouble finding stuff. Like,
wow.
I don't know.
I mean, there's so much.
There's so many notes and you hear all of them. There's no cracks. There's no, oops, somebody played like a 64th note too long on this note. Every note is matched. It's like the first time that we like heard what a perfect horn line sounded like in a lot of ways, because that was the thing we talked about that whole season in that 2013 season was we're not going to try to win this year. We're going to try to get a 20.
Wow.
We're going to try to beat.
Wow.
Like that's what we said that year. We didn't say we're going to try to beat whoever. It was we're getting a 20 and we're going to do the best that we possibly can. We're going to get 20 and we're going to set a standard in how perfect you can be as a horn line.
Yes.
And then the results kind of speak for themselves, obviously. I mean, it's unbelievable what happened that year. And that was such a cool experience, obviously.
That's crazy because all my questions are just right here. And as you're talking about this, I'm like, oh my God, these bring up all my questions I have here.
There we go.
Because I went back and I listened to such a cool tape, and I'm so glad DCI posted this, but they posted the music effect tape from semifinals, I believe.
Yes, I think it was either
by Joe Allison.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh my God, I can't believe I got that name right off the top of my head. That's awesome.
Yeah,
he had a great quote. He had a great quote in here, though. He was talking about you guys specifically, like after you hit that opener, you start with these 16th note runs on the move. And he's like, the first words that come out of his mouth in that second production is just like, God. And it's just like everything's happening. He's like, oh my God. And he's like, you're making the impossible relevant. And he said that quote, and I have that written down here next to the question, what does it take to become a perfect score brass line? What goes into that?
Every single person in the group deciding that you're just going to be perfect. Some people need this much time to get there, and some people need this much, like off the screen, right? Some people need more time to get there. It's not just, I can play this perfectly. It's that I can't play it any other way. Like that was the way that it was drilled into us that year. The thing that's so awesome about it too is the way Klesch writes his books. You don't have to ask a single question about the way that anything in the score is played.
Very clear.
It's so obvious how you're supposed to play every single note in the show. So that you can go home and learn the music. And when you show up, everybody who's standing next to you is playing it the same way that you are.
Everyone's got the same idea of what they're supposed to do.
Because there's no question, like you don't have to ask. It's like, what is this? What kind of accent do you want us to play? Like, no, every time there's an accent, it's played this way. Every time there's a staccato marking. It's played this way. And if you play it any different than that, it's going to be very obvious that you're just
and
not.
You will stick out.
Exactly.
You'll be the only one.
Yep. And so I just remember when the line was set, and Kevin LaBeouf was our horn sergeant that year. I just remember like he constantly that season was telling us like, hey, we're chasing perfection. Yeah. And every single day we're getting closer to it, which is obviously like that's kind of a cliche, but the way that he said it to us, like it's not a question of like, hey, we're chasing this thing that's not like you can't catch up.
Yeah.
It's we're gonna get it. Yeah. Yeah. Like we're not gonna worry about like, oh, we're chasing this unchaseable thing.
We're gonna go right after it.
Exactly. Like that's
and here's how we're gonna do it, and here's what we need to do.
Yes. And that was the approach that every single person in that line took to the like. Yep. And I remember showing up to move-ins and playing stuff in some of those rehearsals and being like, oh my God, like how great we sounded on day one of spring training, which now like with the teaching ears that I have on, I'm sure I'd be there and be like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Right. A little bit, right. Yeah. But I just remember being there and like, oh my gosh, like this is great.
Pretty good.
Yeah, this is amazing. And then the whole season, like everybody showed up and had their book perfect. So like the whole season, it wasn't about I'm gonna play my book perfectly.
We're trying to clean by San Antonio, and then we'll clean this part.
Exactly. It was all like it's not about being perfect. It's about being perfect 10 times in a row. Mm-hmm. You go 10
consistency.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's can you be consistently that level of perfect? And that's the reason why we were so good is because everybody was just so drawn into being a part of a horn line that sounded like we did.
Does it first rep every single time. Mm-hmm. And that's special.
And we were on the West Coast that year too. We did West Coast tours. So we were doing shows with Blue Devils the entire season.
Oh, wow.
Which was honestly like the excitement of the competitiveness of that season was like, we didn't have 2 or 3 weeks of the season where it's like, oh, none of the top 3 are at the show. None of the top 5.
The big dogs that we're competing with that we're at, when we get to the regionals, like they're going to put us up against these guys.
Exactly. It was every day, every show, the top 3 at the show. It's Vanguard, Blue Devils, Crown, every show, like for 2 weeks.
That is fun.
It was nuts. It was such a fun time being a part of all that. Like we got to connect a lot with the Blue Devils that year and like hang out with them and talk to them. And there's a lot of guys from that 2013 Blue Devils horn line that I still know to this day, just because I got to be around them a lot during that season. So
that's so cool. I think that's so cool because I think like when you first get into the activity, you hear like little murmurs. We've talked about this before. I talked about this with Joey DeShera on a previous episode about the Blue Devils. Like you watch them when you first get in, or you're watching from the outside, and you're like, they just move different. It feels like just like larger than life. And then you hear some people being like, oh, they're jerks. Like they're so arrogant the whole bit. And I remember in 2017 we had a free day for the 4th of July, the Oregon Crusaders we did, and it was on the beach in oh my goodness. Now I'm forgetting where it was, but I'll remember it probably after this episode and be like, oh, why didn't I say that? We shared the beach with the Blue Devils for the 4th of July.
Oh,
and
cool.
I remember like the trumpet sections just hung out. And I was like, these are the coolest dudes ever. They're just like us. And I was just like, from there on out, I was like, okay, you guys can't say anything because you don't know. I'm like, these are just band kids like us. And we all want to do the same thing. And they're cool. They just decide to do it the first time.
They do it the first time and they do it all the time. Like, obviously I've had a chance to teach with a bunch of people who march Blue Devils, and I've had a chance to like be around a bunch of people like that. I don't know what it is because I didn't march Blue Devils, but like every single person that I've ever seen who marched there, they just carry themselves differently.
Yep.
Like they just stand taller all the time. The way that they just interact with the world is just so fluid and professional and confident. Like in every single thing that they do. They don't just do it during their season. They just that's just how they are
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to see how a lot of that stuff happens. But
that's awesome.
The 2013 season was pretty wild. There's a lot of
wanted to talk about real quick. How old were you when you got to Crown in 2013?
18. It was
18.
Yeah.
So going into your second year and you're 18 years old, being at the top of the activity, still super young, playing in this horn line that's, going for the perfect 20. For you, since you had these struggles in your rookie year, were there some struggles that you went through your first year or your first years, maybe, I don't know, at Crown?
I was better functioning, but I was still dumb. Like, I'll just put it that way. I had a hard time not saying things out loud. And it wasn't, and I don't mean that to say like I would say bad things to people or I would say anything mean spirited.
You just
like,
say the first thing that comes to your head.
And it's dumb. Like, just like, I'm just spewing things out of my mouth that are just like,
Yeah.
Why did you say that? You didn't say anything bad. Nothing that you said was like disgusting or inappropriate. It was just like, why is
what are you
that
saying?
That's what you're thinking about right now? Come on, dude. Just weird stuff like that. I remember before I marched drum corps, I posted on my social media pages constantly about drum corps.
The discovery of social media.
Exactly. And I remember at some point in that season, like Harloff like sent us like a really amazing quote about something, and it's just like a screenshot of this picture.
Yeah.
And I took that picture and I posted it on my Facebook. And like 3 vets messaged me and they were like, "What are you doing?
What are you doing right now?"
You're like, and it was just me being an idiot. Like, that's literally like, there's so many
growing
things
up
I had no idea about. And I was just like the biggest band geek ever. And so I'm not thinking that I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. I'm just showing people how excited I am about this thing.
Yes.
But now I realize like that's not how that works. Like, it's just like this is us. Keep it in our bubble and don't share it with other people. Like,
think about it. Think about it real quick.
So I just did dumb stuff all the time.
Growing pains.
Dumb things all the time. And that got better as I kept marching more years. But man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you talked about Kevin LaBeouf talking about you guys at the beginning of the season being like, yes, we're not chasing this thing. We are going to go grab this thing. We're going to go take it, and we're taking what's ours.
Yeah.
Starting off with that goal, that intention going into a season, when you hit San Antonio and everyone comes together for the first time, could you guys feel before you get to finals that like, yeah, we're taking this whole thing? Or is it kind of just like, we're still going for our personal goals here, we're not worried about a first place, a trophy, whatever?
That's a good question. I remember that being really hard the whole season. I remember that being a real struggle for not just me, but for everybody. Just like, it's hard to not focus on the competition. Like,
when you're placing where you're placing, you're like, you kind of got to think about it, right?
Well, and it was every single show for the entire season. We were either in first place or we were in second place. Every single show that entire season. Because, like I said, we were with Vanguard and Devs on the West Coast to start the season. And then obviously we get back into the middle and we meet up with the Cadets, who were fantastic that year. I love that 2013 show. It's fantastic.
Yes.
2013 the Blue Coats, that
was the Coming to America show, right?
Yeah, I remember that. Hornline sounds phenomenal, like played great, a lot of good stuff, and it's hard to not focus on the competition throughout the entire season, because it's just smacking you in the face after every show. And absolutely. I do remember we got to the end of the season and Klesh kind of had a conversation with us that got us to stop worrying about it so much. And he was just like, "Hey, do you guys think that you at your best is the best in this activity?" And we said, yes. And at that point, he was like, and it was that same thing I've been talking about. If you're not doing your best and you get second place, you have no right to feel upset about that.
Yeah. Like, you put everything you did.
Exactly. If you do the best thing you possibly can do and you don't win the show,
that's you put everything you could into this thing, and that's the results you got back. You can't you controlled what you can control.
The control part is exactly that. Like, can you control getting first place, second place, third place in this activity? No. Can you control being great? Absolutely you can. And that's all we focused on, like, for the remainder of the season. And to be honest, that's where the fun started for us, because we knew we were good. Like, every time going into a block, and like, we were so good that year that like I think it was either San Antonio or Atlanta week. We had a week where it was, all right, what do we want to clean now?
Whoa.
I don't know. Here's a good idea. And this was, I don't know whose idea it was on the brass staff, but their idea was, we're going to relearn our whole book. So
we're so good at this point.
We're going to put our face into our book, and all we're going to do is we're just going to go through it and make sure that we are correct in everything that we think we have memorized.
Undeniable.
Exactly. That's like literally what we did that week. And I've never done that with any other group. It was just that year we were so good that we had a week of just, all right, part one, anything that I've never tried to do before. 90% of us would go through the whole book and be like, yep, got it. Yep,
Can do that.
everything's there. And then everyone, like 10% of the group had like one or two things in the book that they were like, I didn't know this was here. And then boom, we got cleaner because people started being more aware of what was written. And like I said, if you play everything as written in a Clash book, things are going to work out.
Setting yourself up for success.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
That was pretty nuts. But yeah, I mean, the end of the season it was less teaching and it was more like, go set up this set. We're going to do this 6 times, 8
just for consistency.
Yeah. It's like you get 6 reps and you get 8 in between. And we're just going to do this. All right, next thing. All right, 6 times 8 in between. All right, next one. 6 times 8 in between. Not much information other than you guys got 3 out of 4 that time. Yep.
Yeah, we got to do it again. So was there ever a moment in that show that like had to be worked on? There's been moments in every single year that I marched that it was like this certain section of this show that took all the way until like Allentown or Atlanta. And it was like, okay, I feel good with this now. Like we've worked all the way to get this to where it's like, okay, this is acceptable now.
Ensemble timing stuff was the main thing, I think.
Yeah.
The way Leon writes the drill, like it's so creative. Just the
spacing was crazy in that show.
The spacing and just like the number of times where it's like the drum line's in a pretty interesting place for what we're doing at the time. Stuff like the beginning of the show didn't seem that crazy hard, but we had to time up bum spread like 60, 70 yards and the battery in the middle of the field. And we have we have to play this perfectly in time with the hands. And it's like
with a forte piano as well.
Yeah, exactly. Matching piano and crescendoing together, spread 70 yards, right? Like obviously stuff like that. Our third movement, knee 3, which was the spot where we played all the crazy chromatic notes.
Yes.
The battery's on the 35-yard line, side 1, and
you got the whole horn line on side 2.
We're 50 to 0 on side 2, and it's and playing just these 16th notes. And then after that, we're playing bum 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 bum.
Completely change up the mood.
Yeah, and it's a lot of 7/8, a lot of like that sort of feel going on, and can't listen to a damn thing. You just have to go right with what you see, like
hands.
That stuff, obviously, like that stuff has to get worked on, and so like we had to spend a lot more time in like brass on the move and an ensemble. But no, in terms of like playing the notes in the book, no,
we were fine.
Yeah,
awesome.
Pretty much everybody just had their book figured out and they could just play it. So
that's awesome. So when you get to finals week and you guys, you end up getting the perfect 20, you guys go on to win that year. For you, what was that like to win so early on in your DCI career? Because I feel like so many kids, when they get into the activity, me included, when I got there, especially when I watched Carolina Crown 2016, that was my rookie year. And in 2016, I remember we got to finals, and I remember I watched Carolina Crown 2016. And I was like, whatever that is out there, I have to do that. And I have to be a part of something like that, because like I want to get to the top of the activity like that right there. And it was like, I was chasing, I was like, I got to get wherever that is. So like when you win the activity at 18 in your second year, what's that like for you?
It was so amazing and exciting, but I don't think I fully appreciated it. I don't think I fully appreciated how hard it is to do that. Not that I don't like work as hard as I possibly can on stuff that I'm doing, but I assumed after that season was over that more of this is just how, okay, cool. Like this
is what we do.
I showed up to Crown, like we're just going to go on a run now. And like, we're just going to win. And we never won a championship again when I was there. Yeah. And I don't think of that as a bad thing. I don't think in that moment I had the full appreciation for how hard it was what we did.
Yeah. To be perfect, like to sit there and at the middle of the season, instead of where people are like, okay, now we're going to take this show where you guys got it and we have to take it here because we actually have to get clean now. Now that we have a cool effect, like we need to really get clean now. Like you guys were just like, okay, well, we're already everything. So let's just get even better from here.
I've always told people like nobody has harsher ears for a production than people who marched in that production. You know, you could probably say the same thing for any of the shows that you marched in, right? Like people might watch that show with you and be like, "Oh my gosh, dude, that was crazy." And you go, "Yeah, but did you hear this thing, this little thing that happened there?" I had that with every group I had ever marched in, except for that group, except for 13 Crown.
Wow.
Like, I'm gonna say 10 times. I've watched that show so many times, obviously.
Oh yeah.
The first like 10 times watching that show, I couldn't find anything. This show's perfect. Like, yeah, we got 20 and we deserved it. The more I listen to it, the more I find little tiny things to where like I'll sit down with some of the people that I hang out with and we'll watch the show. And I'll hear that one thing and they go, no.
Shut up.
No. So yeah, but like I said, I don't think I had full appreciation for how hard it was to do all that stuff. And I know I had some moments in the middle of my drum corps career where I got very cocky about a lot of that stuff.
Because that was your first year at Crown. Was like my first year here, we won.
Yeah.
So I come back here and like and this is a great question. This kind of leads me into another question I had, which as a group moving on into the next year, maybe the year even after that, what's the mindset of the whole group after just, you know, winning DCI for, I believe, the first time for Carolina Crown, and then also getting the only perfect 20 brass score to date? What was the mindset going into the next year?
The mindset was, we were perfect. Now we're going to do things that are harder than anybody's ever done. And that is what that 2014 show was. That show was so hard. The season was hard. All of the responsibilities that every single person had every single day was crazy. Like, if you were a member of our prop crew in the 2014 season, for all of you who are watching, shout out. If you were on that 2014 prop crew, you had time to do 3 things: sleep, drum corps, EPL. Your life is your life is EPL.
Oh.
Like, you wake up, you get breakfast, you unload the trucks and put 70 props on the field. Probably it was like 60 or 70. I don't remember the exact number, but it was it was up there. And it's not like any standard props. It's like we have 4 trampolines. There's bass drums and
timpanis, right? That you had just like around the field.
All over the place. Oh, and then we also had those like metal racks with the
the whole like for that little drum feature before the brass feature.
Yep, all that.
All of that too. You had to set that all up like every day.
Every day, and it took about an hour and a half every day to unload the truck.
Oh, that is a nightmare.
Yeah, that's to unload the truck. It took a solid hour and 45 minutes to load the truck.
How do you EPL if you have to do all that? How can you do it?
So like, I think a lot of what they did is like they would have friends bring them food. So like their EPL was, we have a meeting afterwards because we do a run through and then we meet on the 50 and we have a meeting. Yep. If you're on prop crew, don't come to the meeting. Just go.
Yep.
The first thing they do, that they go shower, and then they would go to the truck, and somebody would bring them food, and somebody would polish their instrument, and then they would, they just didn't like the first time we ever did EPL at our spring training site.
I feel like you had to practice that just in general. Like you're just like, okay, we're gonna practice how to EPL with this thing because we need to.
And I don't think they realized how hard it was going to be to load it or store everything. So our first EPL was, I think, like 4.5 hours. And it was scheduled for 2 hours. It was scheduled to be a regular 2, maybe. No, we were leaving our spring training site, so we probably had an extra half. It was probably 2.5, something like that. But it took 4.5 hours to EPL. It took that long to figure out how they were going to load the truck. Yeah. And because we just had so much stuff. So like that was the main crazy part about all of that. But like you go to the brass book that we played that year.
With how like I have down here, I mean, like I remember when I watched this as a kid and I was just like, oh, this is like the coolest thing ever. And that brass feature, by the way, is still to this day in 2023 my favorite brass feature of all time. I listen to it all the time, and when I got to prep for this interview and listen to that, pretty sure I just like on my little PlayStation controller just kept going back and playing again. Going back and
you're talking about that trumpet, that trumpet feature,
that whole high brass feature where you take the whole like horn line and all 80 are on high brass, and like ever since 2014, because I mean, just a little like nerd story for me. When I was a kid and I would go to finals and I watched my brother, he was in Boston at that point, and we would watch Boston, And then after that, we would stay back and we watch all the shows. And I remember we were sitting somewhere in like the 300s. And I remember you guys played that brass feature. And I watched it all 3 nights in a row. I got to. It was crazy. But I got to watch it. And every single time without fail, when you hit the pop at the end, wherever I was sitting, why it's so cool to me is because like being a kid sitting in those stands and hearing how loud that crowd got around me. Like when I got to watch it again, it's just goosebumps every single time because I can put myself as a kid back in the stands and feeling everyone just being like, "Oh my God, how did like it was basically like, how did they just do that?" It was just such shock of just like screaming just in shock. And I did the same thing. I was like, how did they just do that? That was like, how did they do that?
The brass book was crazy hard, but then you add on the fact that
visual
half the horn line had to learn 2 instruments.
That too. How was that for you as a low brass guy? How was it for the low brass being adjusting? Like, how did you guys get adjusted to that?
It was very hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine for the tubas, like having to play on just a massive mouthpiece all the time. And then in one part of the show, you got this little tiny high brass.
Take half of what you play on for the whole show.
half might be being nice too. Like it's pretty significant. Like that was just crazy. And so like I do remember at the beginning of the season, like every single day we had to do 30 minutes of high brass fundamentals. And for the most of it, it was because like we split the horn line evenly, high brass, low brass. We were able to just pair up with somebody in the high brass, and we had like a high brass buddy who would teach us how to play trumpet, which was great. Especially, I mean, it's Crown, so all the trumpet players are like
solid.
They're amazing. they're crazy good. So like having somebody like that teach you how to play trumpet is pretty cool. And so we had to do that like 30 minutes every single day during that part of the season, and the sounds that we heard come out of people's instruments in spring training, it was like, we're trying to do this.
We're going to do this.
All right. I didn't really buy it for a while because I was like, this is hard. But is this like unnecessarily hard? Then we got to the end of the season and listening to us play it in like at finals, and you hear every note. And it's like, this is just why they are the way they are. Like they say we're going to do something that's never been done before, and then they just do it. And that's the secret. Like that's like.
So there was just one day where it was just like, even though it had just been rough like, was there ever just a point where everybody got it? Or was it kind of just like, either way, we're going to keep doing this all season and you guys are going to have to hop on board?
There was, I mean, Tony the fireman was very, very needed for that part of the show. If we're being honest.
Absolutely.
They cut some people off the boats, and that did a lot for cleaning up that part of the show.
Absolutely.
We got to the end to like around San Antonio, and we just decided like every single day we're going to hit this hard. Pretty much everybody, the way that it was written, there's 6 to 7 beats worth of notes. The last part of it was like 12 beats worth of notes and stuff like that. And it just gets passed on to the next group. So there's these pods, and every pod plays the same thing, but at different times. And so we cleaned it by playing it at the same time. Like, so like it was written as like we're all playing different things in the way that it sounded, but the way we cleaned it is we just would play it together every single day. And until every single brass player sounded the same doing that. Now you split the groups up again, and magically it's cleaner because we all are approaching it the same way now. And like that's what we did, and that's kind of how we got to a place where it was pretty damn good at the end of the season. The other part to talk about how hard that book was, every single thing I played in the opener, I was triple tonguing. Whoa. I was never not triple tonguing in that show.
Oh my God.
It was nuts. It like first thing you do, you play the loudest D flat in the history of DCI, but just and then the horn comes down.
Instant track meet, like off like after the first sustain, it's a track meet for the rest of the show, basically.
Yeah. It's the hardest in my mind. It's one of the hardest brass books that's ever been written in the activity. It's
for sure.
It's definitely up there with like Crown 2012. Like that book is just way too hard in some cases, but they just they just do it. It's great. So
for you guys, you in 2013, you guys win the activity and everything, and you come back in 2014, and at the end of the season, you guys place in, I believe, 4th or 5th that year. 5th that year. So in your perspective, what do you feel like held you guys back that year in 2014? Was it just like we're trying to top last year and do the impossible, and it was just like the impossible meeting like reality, or what was that for you guys?
I think I think that's exactly it. I think that year we learned a lot about. You ever hear the question of like, you asked if you could, you never asked if you should?
Yeah.
Like, that whole thing, like that was a lot of that show. It was like, what's a list of impossible things that we can do right now? And then we
Right.
just did all of them. And like, they just like, so yeah, in a way, I think it was so much responsibility on every single person all the time.
Yeah.
And people like just never got a mental break from any of it. The number of times we went into the lot and rehearsed before a show was crazy. We would get in uniform and our music warm up was like an hour and a half, because in order for us to like make up for some of the rehearsal time that we missed throughout the season, we would just clean stuff in the lot because we had to. Like, we just didn't have time to clean things outside of the lot. So a lot of our lots were people still showed up and watched it, and like that still happened. We never got to the point where it was like, all right, we're bringing our books to the warm up today. Like, we never got to that point because like just everybody had their book memorized. Like,
Yeah.
that's just what we do. Like, you show up and the book's memorized.
You're memorized. Yeah. When you get on tour, you're memorized.
We just didn't have time to get the reps in that we needed to get in. So we just had to rehearse in the lot and get a lot of that stuff happening. And to be honest with you, like when we started switching to that form of lot for us, like we actually started doing a lot better, and not competitively necessarily, but our performances were just better. Because if you were not like 100% mentally checked in to do that show, it was going to fall apart. It just was.
Yep.
So we had to be in the mindset of, I'm playing everything as perfectly as possible.
Yeah.
Or the show wasn't going to work. It just wasn't.
It's like always performance mode. It's not like this is rehearsal. This is like we're always just here.
Yeah,
going
exactly.
forward.
That changed our season around quite a bit from a brass perspective. I actually like there's parts of that 2014 book that are also just as clean as anything we played in the 13 season. The horn line was very good that year. We just didn't have as much time to work on stuff as we did in the other years. So
yeah. For you, what was like the hardest part in that 2014 production?
When we changed the drill at the end of the show, I did not have Princess Drill at all. It was all 4/5, and playing dotted quarter note accents at 180 while I'm sprinting. And it was really hard. And I always lost a lot of weight when I marched, just because I tended to be pretty heavy outside of the drum corps season, and then I would the drum corps season be significantly lighter than I was. But that year especially, when we changed the drill, I lost as much weight in the last 3 weeks of the season as I did the entire
you did it for the whole season those last 3 weeks.
Because it was so hard. It was like every time we did that chunk, I'm just gassed every time.
Yeah. Where do you find a spot? Because there's always like, as you go through, you start tour, and then as you go through a summer, especially learning your show, you start to talk about parts where you find like recovery spots, or spots where you can find places just to breathe and be like, we can recover. I watched the show back because I was like, oh man, the show is so cool. And then I watched it back. I'm like, this was a track meet the whole time. And I have a little note that I'm like, at 8 minutes in, we're still like chugging right along the same pace we were going in the beginning. So like, is there any spot for recovery?
the ballad-ish. I mean, like the beginning of the ballad when all the solos are happening was like the slowest we moved in the whole show. And so like, that was, and we had to recover there because the next part was like the whole horn line playing piano to mezzo piano crescendos. And then back, and it was like we had to be super controlled and play with great sounds. So like it wasn't just like this is the spot to recover. So you have to, like, you're not going to play this well if you don't.
Absolutely.
So like the ballad was kind of that part of the show, because you're right. The opener we're sprinting the whole time. The entire second movement was basically a percussion feature. When we weren't playing, we were just sprinting the whole time. It was just dead sprint every second of it. The beginning, when they're playing on the metals, I forget exactly what they were playing on. I think it was like car.
It looks like car pistons or whatever.
It's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're playing on this stuff. And while we're doing that, like we are sprinting and running around a trampoline.
Yeah.
Get under there. You have 2 counts to reach under this timpani and pull a trumpet out, and then you have to run again. And then play that entire high brass feature. So we were all gassed for that high brass feature, by the way. Like we were all gassed.
Oh my God.
Because we had to sprint into it, especially the people in the first. I was in the last group, so I had like 5 seconds to breathe. But the people in the first group had no time to breathe. So,
oh yeah.
But no, you're right. There was no part of that show that like other than the ballad that gave you a chance to like recover. Like you just didn't have it.
So moving on from 2014, you went into your third year in 2015 with Crown. And something I want to talk about that we talked about in Dylan's episode specifically that we both experienced at our groups was that nowadays it's very different in the activity. It feels like where, you're supporting like the performer's dream and where they want to go. And so if they move forward and they go to another group, it's like, yeah, dude, go do your thing. Like go do whatever you want to do. Like go achieve what you want to achieve.
Yeah.
But even when I started in 2016, still was kind of happening then where it was like more focused on like, you got to be loyal to the group. Like when you get here, we're not, especially where I was, where we're middle of the pack to lower, bottom 15. It's kind of like, we're trying to build something here. So like, we're really focusing on getting vet retention and people coming back every year. And it almost felt like when you were like, well, I kind of want to go audition for these guys and just see what I can do and like give myself a shot. It was like, oh, really? Like you're gonna try to leave us? Like, you don't want to build up. Like this is a stepping stone for you. It almost felt like a little bit of like a betrayal. It felt like if you went to just challenge yourself and go somewhere else. Did you ever experience anything like that during your time?
Yes, I did. That 2014 season was very hard to do. I did not have the hardest jobs of the people that were in that drum corps. Like there were people who had to work so tirelessly to make sure that everything was happening and just had no time to do anything other than, like I said, sleep, rehearse, flash perform, and EPL. And that's it. Like that's it. And like for people who had to go through stuff like that, I totally get the whole thing. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
I get finishing that season and being like,
I gotta go.
This is what
I can't do this again.
Right. But no, I definitely, I mean, I felt that a little bit because like the second season, I don't know if you kind of start to feel like you probably felt this your second year of drum corps, but you start to feel like you're figuring it out and you start to feel like the days start to get more predictable and it's a little easier to do your job. I was working as hard as I possibly could. To be honest with you, for a lot of my experience when I was in that season and even in the next season, I felt like I was a meme. Like to the people. I'm serious. Like I felt like I was a bit of a joke to some people because Matt Harloff does know my dad and does know a lot of my uncles or know my uncles too. There's some things that Matt says to me that he doesn't say to other people because he knows you a little bit more. Oh, yes, exactly. But a lot of times when you hear your brass caption head say something to somebody, you start to believe it. That's your teacher. That's your guy. Right. And it's not like I was like, oh, Matt's just doing whatever and he's like being a jerk to me. Like I didn't feel that way. Yeah. I didn't feel that way. I did feel like like some of the members that I was marching with were that way, where they were hearing some of the things Matt was saying to me and I knew it was whatever. And they were like, they thought like they were taking it very seriously. They thought he was taking shots at you and you were like, no, he's like, he knows my dad. It all goes way back. Exactly. And so if there was any reason why I wanted to go somewhere else after that 2014 season, it was because I felt like I wanted to be around a different group of people. Did you ever feel that way? Like you wanted to move on? Oh, yeah. I asked my dad if I could go. I wanted to go audition for the Blue Devils. I did. Yeah. I'm really glad I didn't. Would I have enjoyed marching the Blue Devils? Yeah, to be honest with you, I don't know if I would have made it. I don't march well enough to be in that drum corps. I just don't. But I thought about it, and when it came time to figure out like how much it was going to cost to do that, it was thousands of dollars more than it would have been to just go back to Crown. I wanted to march drum corps, and I was excited to go back and do it again in 2015. And to be honest with you, the crew of people that was at Crown the next year was pretty different. And was a pretty awesome experience to be around a lot of those people that year. So absolutely, I know you probably asked some questions about the 15 season, but because it literally just leads into my next thing. You just set me up perfectly here because I wanted to ask, like, this year seems to take a step up from the previous 2 years. And maybe it's just drum corps in general, taking steps up in design and everything just in general. But what was different this year from the 2 years prior? Maybe just with groups or shows or whatever it may be. I'm going to surprise a lot of people by saying this. The 2015 horn line was, I'll say it was the least talented horn line I was in. It was.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh
It
my
was.
God.
By a little, but like not by a ton.
But
It
yeah, I
wasn't
mean, if
like,
you compare like the other 4 years, like,
yeah,
is that even like a diss? You know,
it's not. It's
it's
not.
not.
But I mean, the 13 horn line is unbelievable. The 14
Yeah.
horn line was fantastic. To be honest with you, the 15 book was also the easiest book I played at
Oh.
Crown. It was so different because I was used to the first 2 seasons that I was there. Every single thing we played in the show was like a technique feature. Like
Yeah.
every time I played my instrument, it was like some sort of technique. And that's really not what that 15 show was. The 15 show was it was very melodic. And so a lot of the stuff that we were playing, while it was less difficult, we were able to dive in so deeply into the details of every single part of every note we played because it was so much easier. So there was such a high standard that season for how are we playing our accents, how are we, because there's so many accents in that show. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Lots of like little tiny melodic lines where it's like these notes are important and we're going to emphasize these notes as we play it. And
Absolutely.
it was so different, but I loved it. It was just, and to be honest with you, going from those other seasons to this season, being 10 out of 10 on my book in this season was way easier to do because I'm focusing on so many things that I've never had to focus on before. It's fun to focus on the music and like the line of what I'm playing as opposed to
creating moments for like the whole show instead of just like every time I pick up the horn, like I'm doing this because we're getting points and I'm showing off my technique. Like we're creating moments.
Yeah, it was so much fun to just like have a different focus. The ensemble timing of that show was nuts. I mean, go watch the beginning of that show. Like when we're spread from 10 to 10 playing.
Yep.
Ba-bam, 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 and every note's there. And because we had enough time, like the show, like I said, the book was not technically difficult. That year I learned a lot about patience. Because going like from we're doing this all the time to
brains moving a mile a minute,
right, to the number of notes I have to play in this segment is way less than I've ever played since I've been at Crown. It was so easy to like push the tempo and to be impatient with your music that year. I just like I had to kind of like learn how to chill and like how to not.
We can take breaths in this show. we can breathe.
Yeah. The hardest part of that show was the percussion feature. That was the hardest part of the show because it was just the whole time, and then we went right into Dies Irae. Like it was such a different year because of that, though. So
how much fun was it to perform that ballad? Because that is like forever a moment in DCI. Like just not even just brass or anything. It is like a full moment forever in DCI.
That part of the show was also very stressful, to be honest. And it was because of a lot of the tempo stuff I was talking about. There's so much decay and space and manipulation of tempo in that movement. You had to catch everything. Like if you missed a cue, the entire ballad's screwed. Yeah. If you missed, the one that I can think of is like we play this big loud chord as we're all going down to like sitting on the ground. We're all standing up and marching, and some of us are either going down to a knee or like going down to sit on the ground.
Yeah.
And all this banner's going over us. And we're playing these accents that are slowing down, going into this big loud chord where we all had to release perfectly together, unison accents. Slowing down like into a seated position. And it was different skills than I had ever really
with
worked
the whole like banner over you, so it's like the hands aren't like exact. What was that whole like, I'm getting nerdy now, but like what was it like? What was that looks so cool.
So you couldn't see anything. You could see if it was bright outside, you can sometimes see, but like at night, no chance. Inside Lucas Oil Stadium, like I see the shine of the light going on onto the banner. But couldn't see hands. So like that entire section of that show was like ensemble playing. It was like
trust each other.
Yeah,
listening.
exactly. I don't know if you have ever had an experience like this in a concert band setting before where your conductor just stops and just starts listening.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yes. Yeah, where it's kind of just like, okay, yeah, we're just gonna see how you guys have like internal tempo, just
Yep,
like trusting your trios, listening around to the other side of the room, just seeing what everyone's internal pulse is, kind
exactly.
of deal. Yeah.
That was that part of the show because you couldn't see.
Hmm.
And it was a little easier when, especially like we added the drum line in at one point to just kind of help out with that just a little bit because that
Yeah.
was really hard. Yeah, we added the drum line in, and a lot of their stuff was very tasty and just kind of like blended into what we were doing. But we could hear them, and it helped us play more in time. So
Oh yeah.
I have some moments in some shows where it's like I vividly remember have like just feeling amazing putting the instrument down after what we just played, right?
Yeah.
And that was one of those where the banner
Mhm.
comes off of us, haven't been able to see a single thing in anything that we do, and then all of a sudden I'm playing the last note, and
And you see everything.
then the banner comes off, and now I see the crowd and I see the drum major and he
Yeah.
gives us the release and I hear us boom nail the release, put the
Yep.
horns down at the end and the audience is losing their minds.
Yep.
That was definitely one of the coolest moments of my
Oh
of
yeah,
my
that's
career.
insane. That is so cool. For Crown, it's like as the years went on, it became a thing about the whole tuning sequence and the circle and everything. And so for 2015, for example, like I remember it was going into my freshman year of high school was the 2015 summer, and I
Yep.
remember there was a certain clip. I don't know what show it's from, but you guys are doing it's only the tuning sequence and it's like not even like the whole build up. It is literally just like it is the sequence and it's like right on the cutoff in the middle of it. Harloff says to you guys, he's like, you got more than that. And you guys just hit the fattest like chord. It's me getting super nerdy right now. But like when I heard that going into my freshman year of high school, I was like, I have to do this. Like as soon
That was
as
Swamp Tour, by the way.
I saw that video and I was like, I think I watched that like every day before I would go to band camp. Like when I would go to band camp, I watched that video before every day. And I was like, when I got to the rehearsal, I was like, I wanted to be like that. I want to do something like that. Cause I just hearing those, like, you got more than that. And then just like the fattest thing, I was like, ooh, like me as a trumpet player, I was like, I got to go do this. I need to do this.
There's a video from the 2013 season that's like that too, actually.
Yeah.
Uh, it's lesser known, but again, I dig into YouTube videos all the
Oh,
time.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
there's a video where we're in Texas and we're doing a warm up in 2013, and
Yeah.
we get to like the turn up, and even me with like not the best ears at that time,
Yeah.
like I was like, I hear a lot of stickouts right now. Like I hear a lot of individual sounds,
Yeah. Some
and
heroes.
the bass is like the low brass is kind of missing from the sound a little bit.
Yeah.
And we play like the first part of the chord progression, like it's just like there's something missing here. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. And Harloff cuts us off and he goes, "You gotta be louder than that." And the sound we made when we came back in was like,
Oh, yeah.
"Oh,
He
okay."
can do that.
Oh man, like again, you're right. It's just
It's pure hype, pure adrenaline, pure like it's just like, oh, we can do
yeah.
that.
It's
From your 4 years there, what was your favorite sequence you got to play?
2016.
Yeah, that was a good one too. That's a really
Not
good one.
close. That was
Really? Not even close?
yeah, not close.
Wow.
The 2016
Wow.
tuning sequence was the most fun to play.
Time for the parts that probably everyone wants to hear about the 2015 season. That as soon as I got in the activity, everyone all the time, big debate, even when I kept marching, even in like 2017, 2018, still big debate. Finals week in 2015. Like I remember 2014 was definitely the reason the next year I was like, I got to get a Carolina Crown t-shirt. Like I got to get the shirt. I like, as soon as I saw Inferno, I was like, getting the shirt, no doubt. Like getting as much merch as I can. Cause I'm like, this is the shit. Like my brother's marching at Boston. I'm like, gotta get the Crown shirt.
Oh my god!
which
Yeah,
which he'll give me a bunch of crap for that. You know, when I tell him I said that and I see him tomorrow, he's like, of course you did. Of course you said
yeah.
that. But I went back and as I was prepping for this, I went back and I looked at the scores because I was curious at the top of the week how things kind of started out because everyone, it's just such a big deal of how things kind of ended out. Something that was so bizarre to me is that in 2015, as we know, the Blue Devils end up winning that year. What's wild to me is that if you look at the start of this week in finals in 2015, the Blue Devils are in fourth place to start the week. As Thursday goes into Friday, the whole top four just does this weird shift. I think you guys are still hanging on in semifinals, but BD has just made this wild jump.
I think it was 1.5 or something like that at prelims, and then we were 1/10 at semifinals. Yeah.
Yeah. So what were the conversations like going through the week? You're getting ready for finals. You're in first. Everything's cool. But as Thursday goes into Friday, Friday goes into Saturday, and these just weird shifts are starting to happen. What are the conversations?
Dude, people were just freaking out. Like it. That was the part of that. Like that season was so awesome to me. Kyler just came home.
Nice. What's up, Kyler?
Hold on. Is this guy gonna come on here?
Oh, is he coming in? Is he coming in the frame?
There he is.
No way. What's up, Kyler?
Hey, man.
What's going on, man? How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're like an hour and 50 into this little podcast right now. Just talking about some Carolina Crown stuff.
That's awesome. You look so much like your brother now. That's so crazy.
I'm seeing him tomorrow. I'm telling him you said that.
That's so awesome. Tell me I say hi.
Absolutely.
Oh,
That's
man.
hilarious. That made me laugh.
That was great.
Awesome. That's awesome.
That was great. No, but back to like people were just freaking out about everything that week. One of my least favorite rehearsals of my entire drum corps career was Finals Day 2015. We were awful at that rehearsal. Like bad. Really bad. For me, especially at the end of the season, like if I hear something that's bad, I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to assume that it was a fluke, or I'm going to give the best and calmest advice that I possibly can to make sure that the vibes are still good going into the day. And like, I'm not making nobody's freaking out. Everything's good.
Right.
This
is it.
This is it. Nothing I tell you right now, if I yell at you right now, like it's not going to help with anything.
Not helping.
And that approach comes entirely from that day, like the experience of that day. It wasn't just like the staff getting frustrated, because they were. And like, I get it. Like we're in first place and we're close. And it's like.
And weird things are happening in the past 2 days where it's like, Are we like hanging on right now? What are we doing?
Right. It turned from every time, like we would just hear all this stuff just flying and people are freaking out. And then all of a sudden it turned in like members yelling at each other. Like we got along super well that entire season. And then all of a sudden, like, the one I could think of was like pretty typical drum corps rule. Like when the color guard is tossing, like, please like stay away. Like don't walk through the color guard when they're tossing. And one of the baritone section members like accidentally walked through the color guard. Just wasn't paying attention. Like it's not a time to like yell. It's a time to be like, dude, awareness. Yeah.
Finals day.
We talk about this all year. Like, hey, can you just be a little more aware, please? It's fine.
Yeah.
But he got like screamed at by section leaders throughout the horn line and section leaders in the guard. I get that from them because that's scary for them. Like,
and like you don't want to get anybody hurt.
No, absolutely not. And so there's just weird stuff happening throughout.
There's just so much tension and everybody is, like you're saying, like freaking out.
Yeah. And I guarantee you this is part of the question, but like, what do I like my thoughts on like the scores at the end of the season? We were not as good as they were on finals day. We weren't. Yeah. And it sucks. Like I felt like we were not great at the beginning of the season. This was a season that took like a lot of building. Like we just had to build on a lot throughout the season. Like we were not undeniably strong early. Yeah. But we worked so hard that we got there. And to just kind of see all of it kind of disintegrate a little bit at the end of the season was pretty demoralizing. We all knew after we walked off the field after finals, like that wasn't it. That was
really?
Yep, we all knew.
Like when you're done finals, you're like, okay, well, there it goes.
Yeah. Well, anything can happen. Like
Right. But you can just feel like that wasn't the one we needed.
Yep. And there's a rule of thumb: the Blue Devils are never going to suck on finals day. They just never
build for that. They're built for that.
Yeah. And so I remember after the season, I watched our show and I watched their show on finals. And I was like, they were better. They were better than we were. They just were.
Yeah. And that's just like you talked about earlier. I mean, when you get to the end of a season and your common goal is that you're all on the same page working together towards a common goal to be the best versions of yourselves. And if that train is breaking down at the very end and you're starting all this tension and you're almost turning in on each other, then what's the point of even trying to go for this first place thing? What are we even doing? I mean, going back to all of that.
People just lost sight of, like I said, like the most important thing, which is we're going to be really good.
Absolutely.
Especially the last 3 days, it was, we're going to win. It was very obvious. It was very obvious that was what the goal was. And
mindset's in the wrong place.
Yeah. And instead of the mindset being on, we're going to play this perfectly, we're going to be great, it was, we're going to win. And then we didn't. And that's the third time I've kind of brought up that philosophy. This is why I feel so strongly about it, because I've had multiple experiences in my time of being in drum corps where I've seen the positives and negatives of being in a competitive mindset like that.
Winning only mindset.
And that's why I hate thinking that way. Like I can't get around the idea of thinking like that because of
absolutely.
Those experiences.
So the story you had leading us into the 2016 season.
Yeah. So we're at the camps in the 2016 season and we're all like pissed off and like hungry and ready to like chew on nails. It's probably the most driven group of people that I've ever been around in my entire life.
High vet retention.
Very high vet retention. And everybody just came back and said like, no, the way we handled last year, we're not doing that. Our goal is we're just going to be better. We're going to be the best at all of these things. Didn't say we're winning. We're going to be the best at all of these things. So like our commitment in that season was, we're gonna be the best drum corps ever. That's the goal.
Yeah.
Can we make 2016 crown the best drum corps ever? And that was the goal. Yeah. And that's how they designed a lot of that show too. We played a lot. I mean, we played Medea, which is iconic, right? If you're gonna play some iconic stuff in your show, like you're saying, hey, we're the real deal. Like that's what they are saying by the way that they designed the show. So I remember we're at the December camp and we get the opener for the first time. We play the Medea hit and it's so loud. It's crazy like how loud we just played. Harloff has us put our instruments down on our towels. For those of you who don't know, drum major of 93 Star of Indiana. So like that's the same one line that played this music. It was a very special moment. Him walking up to us and talking about this moment of the show. And he wraps up by saying, if this isn't the loudest moment in the history of this activity, then you don't deserve to play this.
That's fire. That's all the fire I need. That's all the fire I need. Amen.
Every single time we played that part, the entire season, it was, this has to be the loudest moment in the history of this activity. Done.
Yeah.
Okay. We're just going to do that. So that's kind of what led into all of the stuff in that season. Like we just were all pissed off about the way that the last season ended, not even just competitively, but also just like the way that we approached the end of the season. So.
Absolutely. So moving on into 2016, you're now 5 years in the activity. For me, we've talked about, I did 4 or 5 years. We had Dylan on who did, oh my God, I think he almost did 7. I'm pretty sure he hit like 6 or something. It was insane. My brother did 5. How do you stay ready for every single season, especially at this point being at a 5-year vet where you're like, I've done this for 5 years. And how do you not fall into the hole of like, I'm a 4-year vet here. I can just like coast to the season. No big deal.
That wasn't what 16 was though. I totally understand that.
It's a trap. It's definitely a trap of you've done it so much that you're just like, I know how to do this now. Everyone knows that I know how to do this now when they see me and they're like, yeah, I can coast.
I felt a very strong obligation from all of the other vets. Not a single one of us were going to let each other down. That was a season where because we were so hungry and because we were so pissed off about everything and because we were just so determined to be great that year, to be honest with you, that wasn't really even a thought. Like
That's cool.
I didn't really have that experience of like, oh yeah, like I know how to do this. I don't have to worry about I don't have to worry about this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, like I maybe didn't practice as much, but that's also just because I was better. Like I got better. Yeah. Like I had to practice a lot the first 2 years I was at Crown because if I wanted to get to the level that everybody else was at, I had to practice that much.
Yeah.
And then by the time I did get to my 4th year, I didn't have to practice as much because I could get to the same place quicker. So I did spend maybe a little bit less time, but my standard for like where it's going and where I'm going to be when I move in, that
Still
didn't
the
change.
same.
It just
Still
took
the
less
same.
time to get there.
It's just you have more training and more skills because you've done so much work on your skills.
So I guess from that standpoint, like I get what you mean, because I definitely didn't put as many hours into it, but I just didn't need to. Like I could just show up. Like I could put a certain amount of work in during the week and be playing really well when I show up, and that's
absolutely.
So
absolutely. What were some moments in your Ageout that made it all worth it for that 5th year?
I think that's the best horn line in the history of the activity. I
official statement.
I think the 2016 horn line is the greatest horn line in the history of DCI because it was the best horn line that I was in of the 4 years. And
not the perfect 20.
That was not no. The 16 horn line was better, and so it's shocking. But like the horn line was unreal. I had the same feelings like in that 2013 season where I was just like, oh my gosh, we're playing so well. But it's my first year with the drum corps. So like, what do I know? Because then I got to like my second year and I didn't have those same feelings of like, oh my gosh, we're so good. I was like, we suck. We got to work on this. And it wasn't because we suck. It was just because like my ears were better. 2015 had the same sort of thing. Like we suck. We got stuff to work on. Spring training.
Right.
2016, I heard us play at the beginning of spring training, and I was like, "Oh,
we're ready.
My God,
we're ready for this.
We're ready." If anybody just gets nerdy enough to do this, watch our preview show. Like not the first show of the season. Watch our preview show from that year. We are so good at that preview show. It's kind of nuts. Like I couldn't. Yeah. It's the best shape I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
That season, just because the show was really hard. But,
absolutely.
And the book was a combination of like a lot of the stuff that we did in the 2015 season where it was very musically driven, and we're going to talk a lot about the musicality of the show.
Yeah.
And the 2 years before where it was a lot of technique, it was like a really healthy combination of both of those things. So it was like very fun to work on the book. Yeah, it was hard, but like drum corps hard. It's fine. Like
right, exactly. It's gonna be hard every year no matter what.
Was so much fun just to listen to the horn line. Because we all were just so committed to being great that year that like nothing was going to stop us. So
that was the year. I mean, for me, going into my freshman year of high school, I had somebody who taught me just for like the band camp season, but Andrew Reeder, who marched tuba at Crown, I believe in 2016 and 2017. I remember when I went to my rookie year at Oregon, and I remember I got to finals week, and I was sitting with my buddies and we were watching finals, and we watched Carolina Crown 2016. I talked about it earlier, but I was just like, I remember watching that and remembering, I was like, somebody that taught me is out there right now. And I'm just watching everything. And I had just got through my first season. I was like, I know I'm celebrating. I did my first season in drum corps. Yay. I get to go back home and say I did it. But now I'm like watching that show finals night and watching the crowd. It just did a different spin on it where I came back and I was like, now I understand how the activity runs because I did it. Because when you're a fan, you're like, oh, that's really cool. And you get to see the finals product and you're like, oh yeah, I mean, they're good. And everyone just gets to see the finals show and you're like, oh, they're great. But like when you've done it and you understand the process that it takes to get there and how long and how many hours go into getting that good, and you're sitting there after doing your first year and realizing how many hours you did to get into your show, and you watch that happening and you're like, okay, I gotta turn it up this next year. Like for audition season, like I gotta go even harder when I go back home from August to November. Like I gotta go even harder because if I'm trying to get there, like it's a whole different level that they're on out there. So like for me, I was just like, this was the show for me that I was just like, I gotta get to that level by the time I'm done in this activity. That was my goal for me.
It was so cool because like there were so many groups of people in that 2016 horn line that kind of held each other together because we were so committed to being great, but it was mentally very hard. Visually, it was very hard. A lot of just like rehearsing with that group because it was such a high standard was like, stuff we're playing is really good. If you are this much off of your game, we're a disaster today. It's not like I'm nailing my book, somebody else is nailing their book, and one person is a little bit off. like that one person being a little bit off. And I had a day that season where that was me, like that.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Everybody.
It was San Antonio. That was a fun day. I remember listening to people talk about just how mentally exhausting that season was. We were so committed to it that like anytime somebody slipped, like we let them know about it. We were not afraid to be like, hey, like we're going to be
Accountability.
great here. You didn't, like, that's not it. And so like there was a lot of frustration because of a lot of that throughout the season. But
Absolutely.
we all pushed each other to be great. I think by the time we got to the end of the season, we were so great. All that stuff that we talked about, like we didn't remember any of that by the time we got to the end of the season. It was just, oh my God, we're great. Like this horn line is unbelievable.
Because you've all pushed each other together. You're back on the same page where we're talking about once again that you've all pushed each other towards this one goal and you've gotten there. And you're like, yep, this is how we do it. This is how we do it every single time. And no matter what happens with the scores, we've done our job to be the best that we can be.
Exactly. That's all we did. And to be honest with you, I've heard so many people, and I don't know this is a fact, but I know a lot of people that I've talked to are like, yeah, you guys were the best drum corps that year. And I was like, that's really cool. If that's your opinion, like that's really cool. And that's what our goal was. That's what our goal was. We were to just be the best at everything. And if we accomplished that, then great. I remember a funny story from retreat that year. They're announcing captions at the end, and it goes best color guard, Carolina Crown, best visual performance. I forget the John Brazali Award. Goes to Carolina Crown. The Jim Ott Award goes to Carolina Crown, and we're losing our minds in there.
We might do it.
I heard somebody behind me. I don't remember who said this, but I remember we're standing right next to the Blue Coats, and we're starting to see like they're getting a little bit up, like and somebody behind me goes, and we're still gonna get third. And the Blue Coats, all of the people that heard it next to me that were at the Blue Coats were just dying laughing after that. And I thought that was a great way to end the season.
That is such a typical drum corps kid. Look at the end. It's like, we're still going to get third, right? All of this right now doesn't matter. Like, that's the 4-year bet right there. Yeah. It's like, we're still getting third. Doesn't matter. That's so
exactly.
Funny.
But that was awesome. That was very funny, and it made the Blue Coats people around us relax a little bit because we were like, guys, calm down. You're gonna win. It's fine.
Do your thing. We're proud of what we did. We don't even care. All right, we did our job. We did our things. So to end it, I mean, at the end of it all, in your performance career, what are you most proud of and I have it in quotations, as you leave?
I don't know if you ever had a drum corps season like this before, but like this in a way felt like the whole drum corps career. But like the basic one is just like that I did it and that I got through it and that I, survived 5 full seasons of it without like completely physically falling apart. Kind of exciting. I was so mentally focused on being great all the time that I constantly had at the end of every single year, including my Ageout year, feeling like, oh, it's over now. Like I've
been pushing myself to the limit every single day.
Exactly. And because of that, I think I often just didn't give myself a lot of time to like look back on my experience.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I am as a person anyway. Like
moving forward.
I'm very much always looking into the future. I'm always looking into what am I doing right now that's going to impact what I'm going to do later. And so because of that, like I sometimes don't give myself a lot of time to look back on the things that I've done.
Yeah. Give yourself some credit.
Right. Like I haven't really done that a whole lot. I just am constantly into, like, I aged out and immediately was into, all right, who's hiring? I want to be on brass staff. Let's go. That was immediately where my mind was at as soon as I was done with my last year of drum corps.
Yeah. But
I mean, the fact that I just got through it, I mean, like so many days where I was just like, can I just go home now? And then I didn't. As far as I'm concerned, that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, absolutely. I think like I was kind of the same way. I mean, COVID kind of stopped everything, but like that's kind of how I was during my years too. Like one year, I remember at the end of the year, I was like, all right, cool. We're going to year 2. All right, cool. Year 3. And then we got to year 4. And I remember at the end of the year, like I'm just looking up at Lucas Oil. And I remember like I talked about it with Dylan, but like I remember I was walking off the field finals in 2019. And I was just like, not that sad right now. I'm not like, usually I'm just like, all the emotions come from a full 85-day season and you're just like, oh my God, we did it. We all came together. And that season being as special as it was, I was like, oh my God, like we really had a special group and we did something cool here. I eventually, all the emotions come because I realized, that getting to finals wasn't the whole thing. It's about these people around me. But I remember like funniest conversation that stays in my head forever after the full core meeting. And, you're talking to individual staff members, you're going around to everybody. I talked to Matt Osborne. Shout out to Matt Osborne. Great dude. And I remember he looks at me and he's like, hey, man, you coming back next year? And I remember I'm looking up at Lucas Oil. I'm like, yeah, year 5. We'll be back here. And I just remember sitting there just being like, year 5. We'll do it again just like we do every other single year. And I'm not batting a single eye. And then, of course, COVID happens. But yeah, that's exactly how I was just like, year 4 ended. Cool. We're on to year 5 and I can't wait to see what we do next year. And I got to keep building off of this. It was always just like, okay, well, this whole thing starts back up in November. So we got to get ready for that. And like, we do the whole cycle again. So because you're kind of in this cycle where everything starts in November, you go through the whole process, you get to May, you go away for the summer, you come back in August, you got 3 months, but realistically you're getting ready for November. So it's just like the cycle never ends. You're always just moving forward. Another little question I had, was there a moment when you knew you wanted to start teaching, or was that always kind of a goal for you?
Yeah, actually, I started teaching pretty much right out of high school. I started working with Carmel a little bit. Like I would just show up to rehearsals and help out with whatever I could. And in order to afford marching drum corps, I was in community college for a couple of years just so I could like not spend as much money on college because I got all my gen eds done, did all that. And yeah, because I was doing community college, like the schedule is so easy. I mean,
got some time.
You got 3 classes a week.
Right.
That are in person, like it's not bad. And so like pretty much every day I could go over to Carmel High School and go work with the group. And I knew before I had ever taught that teaching was something I wanted to look into, but teaching the marching band those years like definitely made me want to do that. One of the coolest parts about doing the Rhythm X stuff, I know that's something you mentioned at the beginning, but one of the coolest parts about doing the Rhythm X stuff was the wide range of people, of like different kinds of people, different talent levels in that group was insane. A lot of the more experienced members of the group ended up teaching some like sectionals and stuff like that at Rhythm X. And so like, we get our baritone section together and we're working on our feature and I'm teaching this rehearsal and I'm playing alongside too, but like I'm teaching this thing. And every time I got more experience doing that, I just loved doing it more and more. And it's like a different reward on the other side. I only got to do it for a year, and it was never really a goal for me. I always loved being on the field. It was always a performing thing for me, but getting to go to the other side, I was like, sure, we'll try it out. Because I got the call. I was like, why not? Let's try it out. And it's just like, when you get to the end of the season, that's a totally different emotional, it's a completely different reward watching a group of people that you help out and watching how they grow over a season. That was the thing for me where I was like, oh my God. I wasn't like a part of this or anything. I was just here helping out and just watching how this group has grown since I started with them in July with band camp. Completely different wave of emotions and just like, oh, okay, I get this now. I don't know if did you ever experience anything like that? I assume yes, but got to ask the question. That's why I love teaching. I had so many amazing experiences marching and even for me, like I'm a middle school band director now. Like I had so many great experiences in the classroom, like just like in like working on great pieces of music and learning how to put that together. So like for me, the reason I teach like is because I want people to get to experience the same emotions that I got to experience when I was doing all of this stuff. Because it impacted me so much and it changed who I was as a person so much that like I want to do the same thing to every single kid that I get a chance to teach. That is the reason that I do what I do. And then also just like the coolest parts of teaching is like when you see somebody who is just a disaster of a performer, right? At the beginning of the season, you're just like, oh my gosh, what?
Here we go.
And you see the light bulb go off for the first time and you see them like the first time they get it. That's a cool thing.
Yeah, that is really cool.
For me, like, obviously when you're a member, and you have the end of the season and everybody's real emotional about everything. Like you have that experience with the people around you. When you're a staff member, you get to watch all of those experiences happen.
Have that. Yeah.
Like you don't, I've had the same sort of emotions at the end of the season where it's just being proud of the people that I'm around and all that kind of stuff. Like that's really cool. But getting a chance to like step back and like watch everybody have these experiences, that's why I teach. That's why I love teaching music so much. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's some beautiful stuff right there. Moving on through. So in 2017, automatically coming right off of your Ageout, go right into teaching with the Academy. And then in 2018, moving on to the Blue Knights. And then in 2019, so at this point, you are, how old are you in 2019?
24 years old.
24 years old. And I think this happens in January camp of 2019, something like that, which I don't think I could go through the 2019 season or anything without mentioning Chad Pence.
Yep.
Absolutely. Rest in peace to Chad Pence. I only got to meet him through an audition at December camp. I'm sure you could have a whole lot to say about him.
I have a pretty crazy music and teaching experience. Like the things I've done that I've gotten a chance to do in my time it's insane. And I mean, so much of it is because I met Chad Pence.
Yeah.
So 2017, I'm at the Academy. Chad is like a consultant on the staff. And you want to talk about like a really scary thing. I knew about Chad Pence. Chad was Gino Cipriani's right-hand man at the Cadets for a long time. So I knew who Chad was. And Chad shows up to Arizona while we're in spring training. I get 3 hours of subs with the euphonium section. And I'm get 3 hours of subs. This is sick. Like, this is going to be great. Yeah. So we go into subs, and Chad Pence comes up to my subsectional with like a lawn chair, puts the lawn chair like right behind me and sits in that chair and is just like, he sits there the entire time. He doesn't go to a single other subsectional. He's just sitting behind me for this entire sectional. And I am so in my head about everything that I'm doing. Yeah. I'm like living on every single word that I'm saying because Chad Pence is behind me. Like I need to
hope we're good here.
And I was so nervous. I mean, it was crazy. And so afterwards I walked up to Chad and I said, "Hey man, like I'm really trying to get better at this. And like, what can I do? Like, I want to get better at this. What can I do?" And he said, "Dude, don't worry about it. You're like one of the best young teachers I've ever seen."
Whoa.
And I was like, "Really?
I'm good. I'm all good from here." Like that would be like, okay, well, I'm good.
Like that was so cool for him to say that to me. And then, I had heard that he was getting the caption head job at the Blue Knights. And so I called him up and asked him if I could join the staff. And he said yes. Yeah. And getting the chance to be the assistant caption head that year. And I ran the horn line a lot at 23 years old. I mean, it's crazy, just unbelievable experience throughout the whole thing. And then obviously we get to the 2019 season. I don't know the exact reasons of why it happened the way it did. But at the January camp, I was pulled into a room with everybody who was everybody at the Blue Knights. Yeah. And as soon as that happened, I was like, uh-oh. I'm either fired or something good's happening. I don't know. So we'll see. And so then they said that they wanted me to be the brass caption head. And that's insane.
Three years removed from the activity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be a caption head.
It was just wild. That 2019 season with the Blue Knights is one of the greatest experiences of my life. What
was it like for you at such a young age, though, getting the keys to a whole horn line? I mean, like the thing for us was just like, I mean, you're not too much older than some of the people who are like, like you're 24. There's people aging out that are 21, but like you still, like we talked about, you had command of the horn line. Still, we all were just like, yep, he's our guy. Like this is our guy, and you just had command of the horn line for the entire season at 24. What was that like for you?
I mean, for a lot of it was terrifying. I mean, and not because like I was scared in front of you guys, but like I didn't want to mess it up. Like I'd put so much effort into like planning out that season, and like every single step of the process was like laid out. Now, at some point in the season, I threw it out because I was just like, okay, cool. We're at a different place now than I thought we would be at this point. We're going to do something different now. To be honest with you, for a lot of that experience, I was trying to make sure that I could keep doing it. The goal was to not get fired. To be complete, like the goal was, I want to do this for as long as I possibly can, because being a caption head is something that I've wanted to do since I was in high school.
Yes. And
just getting a chance to watch my dad do it when I was in middle school. Like, I definitely was like, I'd love to do that someday. That'd be cool. And then when I got to high school, it was like, I want to do that someday. And then it just happened. And I got really lucky to be in the position that I was in. You know, I thought it was going to be like, I'm going to have to teach a drum corps for 10, 15, 20 years before I get
doing teching before we can get all the way up there.
Exactly. So like the fact that that was just something that happened, I wanted to take full advantage of the situation so that I could because I just want to do this forever. That was exactly where my mindset was at that time. And then also I cared so much about you guys being successful that I was pretty much willing to do anything to help you guys be successful that year.
Yes.
And that was exactly like what my mindset was from the minute that I heard that I was the caption head until the end of the season. I'm going to do everything that I can possibly do to make sure that you guys are successful.
I think the coolest thing for me, and I thought about this last night as I was going through everything, making sure I did everything right. You know, in sports, for coaches, there's like players coaches, you know, like people that have coaches that have played in the game, whatever profession it is, that understand what the players are going through. Yep. And so it's like they know how to be there for the players. And when I got there in 2019 and you were the caption and you felt like the first like players coach in DCI to me, where it wasn't just like some like way older guy that did it way long ago and it still like has this position, which is like totally valid in its own right. But you were the first one who had just aged out of the activity 3 years ago and you knew how to look out for the members. And that was like, you were like the first players coach I ever met, basically.
Yeah.
You know,
if I can remember from the beginning of that season, the stuff that I laid out to you guys is like, we're going to be great. And as long as you're constantly in the mindset of we're going to be great at every single thing that we do, I don't care what you're doing when we're not in rehearsal. Like this rehearsal is going really well. Let's like say some dumb stuff to each other because
let's keep it fun, keep it light.
I'm 2 minutes ahead. I could like get more ahead, but like we're also in the middle of
enjoy it
and our brains are all melting. So let's like have a real talk for a little bit and like do that sort of stuff. Like, and I think that's a key thing for anybody who ever wants to be a teacher in the activity is like, as long as you lay out very clear expectations for how the people in the group are going to do on certain things, you can start to be a little bit more lenient with other things. If we're all on the same page with what the overall goal is, if we're not exactly on the same page with like the little tiny things that at the end of the day don't really matter, then why should I care about it? I have to worry about our rehearsal tomorrow. Some kid, right? I have to plan for this rehearsal that we're about to do. And oops, I just heard a kid say something out loud that they probably shouldn't be yelling in when we're inside of a gas station.
We gotta go.
I'll just walk up to them and be like, hey, maybe not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. They'll be like, you're right. All right, let's go.
So
that's funny.
Yeah, but I think the expectation, and I felt like the expectations for like what we were going to be that year was very clear, and I felt like the plan at the beginning of the season was just like, here is the right path.
Yeah, and this is what we're gonna do.
Go down this path. Like, it's not about here's 7 different paths. All of you go down the same one. It's
here's how we'll be great.
We're going to go down this path. Here's the answers to the test. Here's every answer you ever need to know. And if you don't know it at any point, that's not good. And that was all we did. And I think it was a very young group, and it was in a way not as talented as that 2018 Blue Knights group was. But I think
very young group too, though. Yeah, very young group.
But like excelled, especially late in the season. Like got so much better at the end of the season, and I have so many great memories from that season.
Incredible season, incredible time. moving through to the 2020 season, COVID obviously happens, shuts down DCI for the summer. Very sad time in the activity. The activity kind of goes into this limbo of, is it gonna come back? What's gonna happen now? We've been on such a hot streak with the activity. It's progressing in this beautiful way. Things are going great. What's gonna happen now? And then we get to the 2021 season. I kind of had a question for you. What kept you going for drum corps through COVID?
I was heartbroken when the season got canceled in 2020. Were you at the last camp, by the way, in that 2020 season?
Yeah, I was at every single camp for that one.
Dude.
I remember that one.
I don't know if have you had this conversation with anybody on this podcast yet about that?
I think we talked about it in Joey's episode, but it was a very brief one. It was a very much like, yes, we're talking about COVID ending, and we talked about this little thing that happened, and then we kind of moved forward, but we brought it up a little bit. But yes, oh my goodness,
I've heard this from everybody from that season, but I think the 2020 season not happening, it was just so sad for every single corps. All I had been hearing from everybody, it seemed like everybody was about to be the best they'd ever been.
That's all I ever see. If you look on DCI Twitter and everyone posts it once in a while, it's always just 2020, everyone was going to be filled with vets that were coming back, and everyone was going to be in their prime because everyone had just gotten so good in 2019.
I don't know how much you remember, but that February camp with 2020 Blue Knights, we were going to be so good that year.
We were miles ahead of where we were in 2019. Also, with so many people, at the end of 2019, so many people were just in agreement that we're just we're running the same group back. I think in the trumpet section, we almost were do we tell anybody? Because I think we all are going to come back. All 25, all 24 of us. I think we all can do it. The Ageouts, yes, but the rest of us, yes, we will be here. I think it almost turned out that way. Almost, I think over half came back, and we're just yeah, no, absolutely running this back.
It was 18 vets in the trumpet section.
It was crazy. It was wild.
I still have recordings of us from that camp in my phone. And every time I listen to them, I'm just oh my God.
What could have been?
So that year. Oh, the recording I have from the February camp of us playing away was better than every time we ever played it in 2019. The thing is, we played it really well in 2019 too. Every time we played it in 2019, I was this is really good. It sounds great. Yeah. And then we played it at the February camp, and I was that's the best I've ever heard that.
Yep.
It's unbelievable. To be honest with you, I was just at all times looking forward to when it was coming back. I really was. And I was very a lot of depression because of everything. I had done every drum corps season from 2011 to 2019. Except for 2012. I didn't do 2012, but I had been a part of it all of those years. And then just not having it that summer was pretty weird. I was able to get some online classes done for school. Yeah. So that was kind of cool. Able to graduate a little earlier than I would have. So that was kind of cool.
There you go.
But other than just being able to get some stuff done over that summer, it was hard.
It's so weird to be out of the cycle. It was the weirdest thing because it didn't even feel real when the whole meeting happened. It was just so everyone's calling it. Everybody's calling it right now. Everyone else is having their meeting as we're having ours. And I was just sitting there on my couch, and I was looking at my ceiling. I was what are you talking about? We have to end this over a call. And I remember I just walked around my neighborhood after that. I was at that point, I had been 5 years in the cycle. And I was just I was supposed to do 7, dude. This has since I was 14, this has been the only thing. I remember even for high school, they're you gonna do state auditions? I'm no, drum corps, got drum corps camp, got I gotta do auditions, whatever. I was nope, don't care. Got camp next month. Gotta practice, gotta rehearse. I got assignments. And band director was not the biggest fan of that. He's why? And I'm I got drum corps, dude. I don't I was because I was this is the process. This is my cycle. I got to keep doing this. And when that didn't happen, I was oh, let's take a break. Oh, and then all of these other, everything else that kind of opened up in life, just taking time to do other things that I also enjoyed in life was also just take some time to relax a little bit. My body feels good, and I can make some money and save some money. Yeah. And I can also hang out with my friends a little bit, and that's kind of cool. And all of these things. And I was
I didn't see very many people that summer. Like, I think
yeah.
I can count on both hands the number of times I saw another human being over that summer. Like,
Oh yeah. Like it was like the biggest event was like, because I had people in my neighborhood, thank God.
yeah,
But like the biggest thing, because we had people in the neighborhood, was like, okay, we can go in our little like cul-de-sac and we can all pull up lawn chairs and just like a little circle, do something like that. And they're like, that was the biggest event like during the summer.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, do we want to like meet in the cul-de-sac and just like hang out? And that was the coolest thing. Is like, what have you guys been doing? Yeah, we've also been watching Netflix. Isn't it crazy? Like,
yeah. Yeah, dude, so many times that summer, like the brass staff just got on like a Zoom call and just played
Yeah.
Rocket League or played
oh yeah.
Among Us. Yeah, we played Among Us a lot that summer.
Yes.
Lots of, I mean, it was so weird. The weirdest thing I've ever done in my life. The days just kind of meld together.
Oh yeah.
During that summer, it was so weird. For like a week, it actually may have been longer than a week. I completely reversed my sleep schedule. Like, it was the opposite. It was I sleep during the day and I'm up at night. Like,
wow.
That happened to me at one point during that summer of 2020. I would go to bed at 10 a.m. It's like 10 a.m. and I'm going to bed. And then I wake up and it's
why
6
not?
p.m. And then just
you can't go anywhere. Where are you gonna go?
Yeah. There's nothing to do. I'm stuck here and I can't drive home because somebody in my family might have COVID and I might die if that happens. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, I have to stay in my apartment and watch TV and play video games, and I can do that at night. I don't have to do that during the day. I can do that at night. What started it is I had a day where I had been slowly going to bed at like 3 a.m.
Yeah.
4 a.m., 5, 6.
It's like, see how far we can push this.
And then now it's 10 a.m. and I'm going to bed and I'm waking up at 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And so it's like I'm asleep when the sun's up, and it was odd. It was
all the days meshing together.
Yeah.
I got some questions here, wrapping up kind of the teaching section of things. What do you look for when you're picking your staff? Or is it even up to you?
Ooh, good question. Number one for me when I'm picking a staff is, are you relatable? Mm-hmm. That's number one. Like, I need somebody to be in front of a section that people are going to immediately buy into. And if people find it hard to buy into a person, like if I struggle, like for example, if I meet somebody for the first time and like they're asking me if they want to be on the staff, like when I'm interviewing them, if I buy into them when I'm like on the meeting with them and while I'm talking to them, this is an easy yes. It's easy. Like when it comes to like what we teach over the summer, that is less important to me when it comes to who we're picking to be on the staff.
The person.
Yeah, the person is entirely what it comes down to. You need to be somebody who is going to do a lot of the following things. We're going to have fun. We're going to do some weird stuff because we're adults and we're hanging out on a bus over the summer. Like things are weird because I remember the first time I ever taught drum corps and I was sitting on a bus and I was like, I could just go home right now. I remember I had a moment like that. So like
I don't be on this bus again.
Right. So we're going to like hang out. We're going to party. We're going to have a great time. We're going to do all that stuff. But like come to rehearsal. Be at rehearsal. Have a plan. Be somebody who's going to work extra hours outside of rehearsal to make sure that the plan for the next day is really great. That's the main thing that I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
When going into a staff is just like, are you going to be somebody who is going to be relatable to the members, somebody that is easy to buy into, like is very easy for people to buy into what you're doing? And are you going to answer the bell? Are you going to be there when it's time to rehearse?
Being able to flip the switch is really important, I feel like, too, as well. Like being able to have that fun, but then when you're in rehearsal, it's just like membership. Like being able to flip the switch. You know what I'm saying?
If the staff isn't rehearsing well, how are the members supposed to rehearse well?
Starts at the top.
If we are not all on the same page with we're going to be focused for 4 hours straight on getting better, then how are the members supposed to do that? It's hard. It's next to impossible to do. So like, yeah, exactly like you just said. Being willing to be focused on being great for that long a period of time. I mean, brass blocks, the first time you do them, they feel like they take forever. And then the longer you go into the activity, like every 4-hour block feels like, that was not enough.
So easy.
Yeah.
You feel like you missed so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Since you've done so many auditions yourself as a person, as a member, you've done the auditions yourself at a high level. And then on the other side of that, you've watched a lot of auditions. What is some advice for the people who are going out there to audition this season? What is some advice you would give them?
This was actually something that I thought was very important when I first became a caption head, is like I wanted to have advice for auditioning in the packets that I wrote, because I have seen so many different kinds of auditions. I've listened to auditions where I hear somebody play 5 notes and I go, and my jaw's on the floor. Like, yeah. I've been in those before. I've also been in an audition where I hear you play your warm-up note and I go, nope, mm-mm. I have so many things, but I'll go through my list of things that I
big hits
pretty much buy into. Prepare.
Yeah.
Prepare. If you don't prepare for your audition, why should I expect that you're going to prepare for the season? So like the worst kinds of auditions are when people come into the room and they go, I didn't have time to prepare.
It's 3 months.
It's the only times I've ever been mean in my life, because I hear, like, if I hear you say I didn't have time to prepare, the only answer I have back is I don't have time to listen to you.
Whew. Which is like, I mean, you have the experience. You're like, I've done it myself as a college student going through. I've been able to prepare for this. You know, like if you're trying to come into a high level group and perform at a high level, how are you going to show up not prepared?
Exactly. So prepare. Like that's number one. Every single audition room you go in, no matter what drum corps it is, the person who is sitting there listening to you audition wants nothing more than for you to play the best that you possibly can. There's never going to be a person in an audition room that is seeking to watch you crash and burn. Trust me, we see that a lot, and every time we do, it's painful. So we want to see you be the best version of you that you can possibly be. So don't get so stressed out and nervous about, I have to be at the standard of X in this audition. You don't. You don't. You need to show us who you are in that audition.
Absolutely.
And if that who you are and like where your current skill level is ready to be in the drum corps, then great, then we'll take you. And if it's not ready yet, we might give you a call back and say, work on these things, right? We want to see the best version of you. We don't want to see you trying to be the best player in the horn line, because if that's not you, then you're trying to be something that you've never been.
Yes.
And we are looking for people who are going to be genuine and authentic.
Themselves.
Yeah, be yourself. Exactly. These are all very little things. If you ask to play a couple notes before you play, make good sounds on those couple notes. Because if you think that we're not judging you based off of those sounds that you're making, you're
doing your audition.
You're wrong.
You just warmed up out there. You're coming in. This is it.
I can't. I've had several times in my career of like being in an audition room where a kid will come in and say, "Can I play a couple notes before we start?" And I go, "Absolutely, yeah, go for it." And then they go make fart sounds out of their instrument, and why'd
we just do that?
Oh God, okay. And then they start to play their etude, and it's like, "Oh, this kid's pretty good." And then the first thing I say to them is not, "Here's what I'd love to hear you work on." It's, "Why did you make those fart sounds when you were doing the notes on your own?"
Yeah.
Like, I was listening to that, right? Like, you gotta sound great all the time. So, like, that's the thing. If you're going to play a couple notes on your own, make great sounds when you do that. Because they're still listening. You're in the same room as them. They're going to judge you off of those sounds that you make, whether you want them to or not. Talk to vets. You will learn very quickly whether this is a place that you fit in well at by talking to vets.
That's a big thing I would always say to everybody, is something I learned at a very young age, was like throwing myself in the deep end and just like 14, 15 flying on my own for the first time, going to a camp alone, knowing nobody. You have to talk to somebody. So you know, when you meet your section leaders and you start seeing them hang out with the other vets and you start, you know, you got to throw yourself in the deep end. You got to start talking to people. That's the only way that you're ever going to feel comfortable at the place you're at. And also know, you know, I've been at some places where, you know, I go audition in a new place. And the first thing is just like, I want to meet the vets here. And as soon as I figure out that culture, I'm like, okay, like, not digging that, or I am, and I got to do this thing. So that's my big thing is there's going to be nerves no matter what. I had them all the time. Even in the 4th year going to BK, like even though I prepared more than I ever had before, there's still going to be nerves there. It's like, I know Dylan's going to be here and I know a couple like OC people are going to be here and that's all good. But like, I can't just cling to them the whole time. Like I got to be me too. So I got to go do my own thing and I got to meet these people and know who they are.
Yeah, you will know very quickly from talking to the vets if this is a place you want to be. By the way, you're very rarely going to talk to vets and go, oh, like that guy sucks.
That sucks.
It's just like those people just aren't in the activity.
Very rare.
That's just not really a thing. And then the last thing, and this is such an important thing, be teachable. Every drum corps, every high school band, every college plays their instruments a little bit differently. And if you think that the way you're currently doing things is the only way to do things, you're going to have a terrible time in drum corps. You have to be willing to hear new information and try it. What you might find out is that this new way of doing things unlocks something in you that you've never really noticed before.
Yeah.
I had a terrible embouchure when I was in high school. My embouchure was just so bad. Nobody told me that, and I just didn't really take a lot of time to worry about it.
This must be the right way.
Exactly. But then I got to the Blue Stars and playing my horn really well and doing a lot of things really well. And one of our baritone techs came up to me and, you know, we're working on lip slurs. My embouchure was bad, so I couldn't play lip slurs. He said, we're going to do an embouchure change. This is during the drum corps season, right?
Yeah.
I am thinking of this for me as a teacher, and like I have a very strict rule. Embouchure changes in a drum corps season are a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yes.
You're going to do it before the season because you're thinking about plenty of things. You don't need to like have every thought into what is
You're trying to learn a show.
What is this part of my face doing while I'm playing?
Yeah.
It's not worth it. But anyway, this happened and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then a week later, I'm not even thinking about it anymore because it's just, I had thought about it so much for a week and I'm good. And things are working. Yeah. And all of a sudden I came back to school and I was a way better player than I was before. And that wouldn't have happened if I wasn't willing to accept this new information that I had never heard before. Be teachable. Be teachable.
Absolutely.
I'm sure I have plenty of other things, but like
that was like the top 5 right there.
Those are the main things I would say. If we were gonna list them off again, it would be you're gonna need to help me out with this. Be prepared.
Be prepared. We also had, let's just throw in be teachable because we can just in no order. We also had talk to vets. We also had, when you go into the audition room, if you're going to play a couple notes, make some good sounds in there.
I'll just say every sound you make in the audition room is judged, whether you want it to be or not.
Yes. Yeah. And then 5, there was a 5 in there. There was definitely a 5 in there. How did I forget this? Maybe that's top 4.
Maybe it's a top 4. Be you in the audition. Be you. Be authentic.
Yeah. Probably the biggest one, if anything, is just be yourself.
Yes, that is the most important one, is be yourself in the audition room. Because we're not just auditioning you, the player, we're also auditioning you, the person, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing throughout the weekend is that like you think that when you go to meal breaks that the staff is just, oh yeah, we're going to go to dinner, we're going to go to lunch or whatever. And it's like, when they walk through the cafeteria and they start looking at everybody like interacting with it, that's also kind of like now don't overthink it and be like, we're getting judged every single moment. Still be yourself, but realize that people are, you know what I'm saying? Like
there's a kid over there who's sitting all by himself and I'm just like, that's not going to work. And it's like, if that kid literally just went over to this other table and just like hung out with some other people, like
just jump in.
Good vibe. This kid's a good vibe. He's just hanging out. And he could be a good vibe either ways. He might just be having a bad 2 hours, but it's an audition.
Still just hop in. Hop in. Last little teaching question here. What is the time in your teaching career so far where you've had this is why I do this moment?
I actually had one of those like this past weekend with the marching band. here. I work with the Rampart High School Marching Band in Colorado Springs. And man, just like I was with them last year, they were about 25 people smaller than they were this year. The culture was pretty weird and it was interesting stuff going on. To this year, where like the culture is unbelievably great and like everybody helps each other, and section leaders staying like 2 hours after rehearsal to help like freshmen
That's
who
huge.
just came in like learn their drill. People caring about each other's success. I remember walking off the field of our performance this past weekend, seeing them celebrate each other was such a cool thing. Seeing members celebrating each other is one of the coolest things that you can ever get to experience. And you only ever get to experience it if you set up the culture in a way that allows that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
If you set up a culture where we're just constantly nagging on each other because we suck at things, people aren't celebrating.
That's not fun.
When we get to the end of the season, the culture this year was not, hey, you're going to do this because I said so. It's the same thing I just said. Here's the path that's going to take for you to be great this year, and we're going to do this. And I'm going to have a high standard for how you do these things when we're in rehearsal. And the culture just improved so much. And I got to run a lot of the like music warm-ups and stuff like that this year. And I'm the middle school director. Like the fact that I get to do that stuff is pretty cool. Shout out Keith Quinциus. He's the he's the head director at Rampart. That was a moment of like, this is why I do this. Watching a culture improve over a year. Going from 1 year to the next and watching that culture improve. Seeing multiple times during a season, light bulbs go off. I mean, I remember there was a moment this year when we were warming up for a show, playing into this we're playing into this big hill. And the area we're in is very dead, but something right behind that hill is like pushing sound right back at us.
Yeah.
And so we play our first F of the warm-up. Play it. Yeah. Boom. Sounds real okay. It's pretty good. Good job, guys. Nice. We go to cut it off. Release is like great. It's like really good. And the kids hear the sound echo off of the thing. And I hear every single one of them go, oh. And I was like, all right, we're talking about this right now. Bring it in. And like we just talk about it. I was just
that's
like,
it. We want that.
That's you. You know. So like, that's why I do this. It's for moments like that where it's
absolutely
like, watching the kids realize, oh, we're actually pretty good. Like, this is cool. So like
seeing the work pay off.
Exactly. So
absolutely.
It's why I'm willing to put up with all of the craziness that is like the stuff that everybody hates with being a band director, paperwork, and, talking to other adults sometimes.
Gotta talk to the parents.
Yeah, exactly.
All different kinds of parents.
Exactly. I love talking to parents. 99.9% of the time. 99.9% of the time, talking to parents is great.
All right. So my last question. I'm down to my last question here. What do you personally think about the state of the activity right now, DCI?
Oh, expectations of the members and like responsibility of the members has never been higher than it is now. Kyler and I have spent so much time talking about this. Again, Kyler, my roommate. The standard of like what is acceptable in this activity continues to just skyrocket. The expectation of like the sounds you're supposed to be making when you're playing on the field, the acceptable level of clarity that you should have in a drum corps show, it's through the roof. The reality is like every single group has the expectation now of you have to be perfect. Like this is a results activity where you being able to show up to this rehearsal and play your book at an unbelievably high level and also being able to execute all of your drill at a really high level is so important. Because if you're a group that doesn't do that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I see that a lot in like, especially in the upper end of the activity.
And someone's raising the bar every single year, design wise, or, it could be anything, but I mean the activity, somebody's out there raising the bar every single year.
Yeah. And there's just, every year people are just doing crazier and crazier things. I don't want to get into this too much because I don't know how much I should be allowed to talk about a lot of this stuff, but the activity is just way too expensive. Some of the frustration that I have with the kind of people that are in drum corps nowadays has a lot to do with the money aspect of things.
That's a very common, like, I think I've asked this question to everybody at the end of every episode, and that is the common denominator at the like the first thing that comes out of anybody's mouth when I ask, like, what do you think about the state of the activity? It's like, we talked about that, but usually the first thing that comes out of anyone's mouth is like, the prices are getting crazy.
Yep.
Like, and I always compare it back to like when I started in 2016, even when my brother started back in 2012. I mean, I think my rookie year was like 3,500, 3,600, something like that, you know? And now I think, like talked in the last episode, but like 55 and like 6,000 is pretty normal.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
My first year at Crown, my tuition was $2,000.
Oh my God.
My first year. And then because I was a vet, like every single year, the tuition went up $200, but not for vets. So I paid $2,000 every single year that I marched. 2 or 3 years later, they had to bump it quite a bit, but it was fine. Yeah. And I think the money part of it also has changed the kind of kid that does drum corps. Your brother marched Boston, so you've probably heard a lot of the stories of like drum corps back in the day, finding this helpless looking person on the side of the road and saying, you're going to join us for the rest of the season. And going, you're with us. And this person who maybe has never played an instrument before, maybe they have played an instrument before, but whatever it is, they're going to come in and we're going to teach them how to play this instrument. And then we're going to hold them to the same standard that we hold everybody else. That gives such an amazing opportunity to people who financially are like struggle, right? Yeah. And there's a whole class and group of people that just can't do the activity because it's way too expensive. People like me who march 5 years of drum corps, that's not happening ananymore. People
want to do like 1 or 2, and it's always because it's so expensive. They're like, well, I hope I can do 1 or 2.
You're going to drop $10,000 for 2 years of drum corps. Like,
and that was probably like 3 or 4.
My 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I spent that much money to do 5 years. Yeah. That's part of it. And I think there needs to be some real conversations about how can this activity last. The activity just had 50th anniversary, I think, right?
Yeah, 2022, 50th anniversary.
How is the activity set up right now so that we can have 50 more?
Yeah. How can we make it to 100?
How can we make it to 100? I think there's some serious concerns with the way that a lot of things are currently set up in just like the way the activity is set up right now that are going to create some real issues for the longevity of the activity. And it's nervous for me because like I said, I've been around this activity since I was born. Yeah. I want to see this activity last forever, but I'm more and more every day concerned about whether or not that's going to happen. And that's scary to me. And I want people to start thinking about some of that stuff when we get into the longevity of the activity, which
absolutely
people are so concerned nowadays about, like, we're just going to, how much money can we throw at this season so that we have our best chance to win the championship? No. How about kids who are like 13 years old right now who are going to be marching drum corps in 3 or 4 years? Is the activity still going to exist when that happens? Is it going to be too expensive for them to ever do it? Is it going to go up to $7,000? Is it going to be $8,000 to march a season of drum corps?
If it ever gets to that point, I don't know who in
the
world could and would, by the way, like fork over $7,000 for 2.5 months. Let's say now, because the schedule's gotten shorter. It's not 85 after 85 anymore. Yeah, it's shorter now.
That's a big concern of mine. But I mean, from a staffing perspective, it's as good as it's ever been. Like the teaching and the activity and the designing,
performance level,
exactly is as good as it's ever been. That's part of the reason why I put so much concern into the longevity of the activity, because what's the peak of it?
What's next?
What's the peak? Could we get to a point where we have 12 groups in finals that are basically perfect?
Would be fun.
Something to think about, but I have a lot of thoughts on this stuff, but I shouldn't say all of them out loud.
I think this is a good place. I think this is a great place for us to wrap up. This has been an incredible conversation. I'm just like the nerdy little fan getting asked some questions sometimes about like my favorite Crown shows.
I'm just nerding out about like some of this stuff because it's been a while since I've talked about it, so it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. This is where we'll wrap here. We will wrap here for the week, for the episode. Keith, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was incredible. I'm still just in shock. I'm like, wow, I really got Keith on the podcast. Like, it's just like, I'm just like, this is crazy. This is crazy to me. So thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an incredible episode.
Thank you, man. This has been so much fun. Just getting a chance to catch up with you, and I can't wait for people to get a chance to see it. And hopefully, like, if I'm able to like jumpstart and maybe get you some more teachers on this podcast and get you some more of that stuff. I'm anything I can do to help this thing blow up. I'm down to make it happen for you.
Yes, please, 100%. yes, and yes. This has been episode 9 of the Meet the Bus podcast with Keith Ty. This has been an incredible episode, incredible conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed. We will see you next week.